This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started today, I want to make sure I take the time out to remind you, as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a review. Very appreciated, very helpful to us if you guys like, what you dislike, the ways you can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. And there's a lot to discuss from the NFL, from NFL Sunday. A lot of different storylines, a lot of different things to touch on. But due to the fact that we have been keeping track of Dan Quinn's job security for the last couple weeks, or basically every week after they lost to the Cowboys in stunning and just stunning fashion. Like, again, that game still baffles me. But then again, they did it the next week, so, maybe I shouldn't be that surprised. Since we've been keeping track of this, it's only right that we start the show off with him, because he's no longer employed by the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons coach Dan Quinn and general manager Thomas Dimitroff. Not sure exactly how you pronounce it, but they have both been fired after, again, they had the team start off. They lost to the Panthers today. They are now 0-5 for the first time since 1997. So, hey, it is what it is. Team president Rich McKay will assume day-to-day oversight of football operations in the interim, according to a statement Sunday from the Falcons. An interim head coach is expected to be announced on Monday. Defensive coordinator Raheem Morris and offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter, both former head coaches of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is kind of funny, are candidates for the interim job, along with assistant head coach / linebackers coach Jeff Ulbrich. Ulbrich was slated to assume head coaching responsibilities if Quinn contracted COVID during the pandemic, so I imagine that could be the way that they go. Decisions like this are very difficult, but the previous two seasons and start to this one have been especially hard for me because of the deep love, admiration, and respect I and my family have for Dan, Thomas, and their families. Falcons owner Arthur Blank said in a statement, for many years they have represented me, our team, organization, and Atlanta with class, commitment, and all the passion you would want in the leaders of the team. Dan Quinn, he was in his 6th season and finished his time in Atlanta with the 43-42 record. He posted back-to-back 7-9 seasons heading into this year after taking the team to a Super Bowl in 2016 with Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator at the time. Obviously, we know what happened in the Super Bowl. Like I said, he shouldn't have been brought back this year. Last season, we kind of realized what he was, but then, hey, the team played better down the stretch. And then, hey, look, maybe it'll turn it around. And they didn't. So, like I said, that's one of those things where it's not surprising to me. And like I've touched on in other episodes, and I continue to touch on, very rarely does the coach that you're we want to fire, but then the team plays decently enough for us to keep him around. Very rarely does that work out the next year. Again, I don't have all the numbers. I don't have every time that this is potentially happening, because I don't know when every coach is going to get fired. But like I said, once you realize who a coach is, and if you realize that this is not the direction you need your franchise to head, and just cut ties. Like I said, there's no point in bringing him back for an extra year, because for what? Like I said, instead of just having a new head coach this offseason, I don't know who it would have been, but they could have. I mean, it's Atlanta. They had a good team. Well, they have good offensive players. defense. I mean, they got people hurt and stuff like that, so it's hard to really say for certain. But also, it's kind of been the story of Dan Quinn's time with Atlanta. Their defense has been pretty banged up. But yeah, so and again, they just got new uniforms. Like, it would have been a good rebrand. They got a new stadium. Like, it would have been a nice rebrand for the team to start it off with a new coach. But again, they chose to bring back Dan Quinn, and now here they are, 5 games into the season. Not the first head coach, like I said. Who was the first head coach? Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was the first. Thought it was going to be Dan Quinn, but again, Bill O'Brien beat him to it. But also, again, he was a GM, so that's probably another reason why he was fired so soon, because again, he was bad at both the jobs. But yeah, Dan Quinn's out of there. Again, not shocked, but at least again, it gives you time to maybe potentially turn the season around. If you think whoever the interim coach is could be better for the team, I don't really know if it's going to matter. But hey, look, maybe they could at least be respectable by the end of the year as opposed to being sorry. And then also it gives you a jump start on finding the next head coach, because, I mean, granted, I don't know. Like, yeah, I would imagine you can't start. Yeah, I don't think you can start interviewing guys until like the off seasons, things like that, especially if you're going higher within the NFL. But like I said, it gives you time to evaluate players. Maybe find a front office guy, since they did also fire their GM. I imagine you could do that if it's not associated with a team. Like, you could probably do that pretty soon if you wanted to. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. But yeah, like I said, not surprising. It was about time, and it ended up happening for Dimitrov. He joined the Falcons in 2008, so he's been there for a while, and he's played a key role in this recent period of success, or the most recent period of success, if you want to call it that. Since his arrival, the Falcons have won 109 games, been to the playoffs 6 times, and obviously went to a Super Bowl in 2016. He's landed franchise cornerstones in guys like Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Jake Matthews, Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones, and like a bunch of other guys contributed and have helped the Falcons to become one of the winning teams in the NFL over the past 10 years. Since 2008, the Falcons are 8th in the NFL and 4th in the NFC in wins. Obviously also did select Vic Beasley, who was a one-hit wonder and now is in Tennessee. He drafted some other guys that haven't really panned out per se for high draft picks. So yeah, it's just one of those situations where it was about time to restart. And again, if these guys are connected and you want to move into a completely new direction, you can't have the coach and the GMs be there. Like I said, unless the GM was new, and obviously he wasn't new. He'd been there for a while. It's been a big part of the team that has currently been built. So then it's like, hey, look, if we want to start over, we need to just completely start over. And obviously the biggest reason for why Dan Quinn's out of a job is because he was defensive guy, came from Seattle, was defense coordinator there, and their defense hasn't been that good. They had a top 10 scoring defense in 2017, and then they ranked 25th, 23rd, and tied for 31st so far this season, respectively. So, yeah, just one of those situations where, like I said, Dan Quinn, you knew it was only a matter of time, and there was only going to be so many losses Arthur Blank was going to take before he relieved him of his duties, and apparently today was the day. And, like I said, shame for Dan Quinn, shame for the GM, but again, when it's time to move on, it's time to move on, and I'm happy for the Falcons and their ownership that they were able to realize that, hey, this is not worth it anymore, and they moved on. So moving on in the NFC, next we're going to have to talk about Dak. Obviously, I was going to talk about the NFC East in general, and then obviously Dak got hurt, so then that changed things a little bit. But yeah, that was a tough one. Just again, for a football fan in general, not a Cowboys fan, or anything like that. But just if you're a fan of football in general, it's always tough to see guys get hurt, especially get hurt in that manner. He got surgery tonight on his ankle. I think there was like a dislocation, like a fracture, something like that. But yeah, already had surgery on it. You could see on the broadcast, even though, again, in fairness, Tony Romo was up in the booth. You can't really see what happened, but the moment Dak went down and grabbed his leg, you knew it was bad, because you could see that his ankle was bent in a way ankle should not be bent. So, like I said, that was tough to see. Tough for him because obviously he's been through a lot this year with the passing of his brother and dealing with depression and things like that, and also like just COVID in general and the contract situation. And this specific instance is why I will never begrudge an athlete of any sport, whether it be football, especially football, because their contracts aren't all guaranteed, football, baseball, basketball, whatever. I will never get mad at an athlete for holding out for their money. Because like I said, and football is, like I said, it's football at the top of the list, but this kind of thing can happen literally every time you step out on the field. And potentially even in practice. We've seen guys like Teddy Bridgewater have a serious knee injuries in practice. Like, again, it can happen literally anytime you step onto a football field. So again, at the very least, you would want to be compensated properly. And that's why I was always on the side of Dak and being like, look, if you get the right deal for you, obviously got the franchise tag this year, which stinks for him long term. Obviously, he got good money for this year. I don't know exactly what the money is for injury or whatever, but it's going to be more than. Actually, well, no, it's not going to be more, but it's more than he made the past few years, which is obviously that's a bonus. But again, if he had been able to gain that long term financial security this offseason, that would have been even better for this because, again, now he's going to be a free agent. We don't know what it's going to look like. Apparently, the recovery they were saying on ESPN is 4 to 6 month timetable, so he should be fine for next season. You would think, but again, you don't know how these things affect people. Gordon Hayward still really hasn't been exactly the same since he got hurt. Paul George has come back and been there's obviously different sports, but you see bad fractures or bad dislocations or bad situation with ankles. Like Paul George had a similar, I don't know if it's the same type of injury, but a similar situation where he had a really bad leg injury, and he came back and he's looked relatively fine. Like I said, Gordon Hayward has looked a little bit worse than he was pre-injury. So like I said, you don't know what it's going to be, and obviously Dak's a mobile guy, uses his legs a lot. That's literally how he got hurt. So you don't want him to lose that because that's a part of who he is. That is a part of what makes him him. So like I said, if he's hampered in any way, he said that's going to hurt him moving forward. Because then again, not that he's a bad pocket quarterback, but his size, his athleticism, him being so tough to bring down in the pocket, him being able to use his legs to extend plays or run for touchdowns or run for first downs, things like that. That's a big part of his game, and that's a big part of why he had been playing so well the last 2 seasons. I mean, obviously, he's played well over the course of his career, but obviously, he's raised his game in the last 2 seasons, including this one. So, like I said, it's just a tough situation for him, and it's why, again, I hope that Dallas does right by him and at least tries to take care of him financially. Like I said, I hope they don't try to lowball him or be like, hey, you were playing good and you were on a record-setting pace, blah, 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 but you did get hurt, so, the contract we did give you, what the contract Deshaun got, we're gonna go 10, 15 million under. I hope they don't do anything like that, but again, Jerry Jones is a businessman, so, and as we saw this offseason, he wasn't willing to go in above and beyond, because that's what we've seen with quarterbacks, is generally speaking, quarterbacks, they get paid above and beyond what they may be worth, because they're the quarterback. They're the most important position. If you don't have a quarterback, then your team is screwed. And now the Cowboys could be in a situation where, looking into the future, they could not have a quarterback, could be looking for a quarterback come the draft. And like I said, it depends on what Andy Dalton does, because if Andy Dalton kind of lights it, if he lights it up, then yeah, they could be fine. But also, they have the offense around him to not be terrible. But again, if he stinks and they're in the Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance sweepstakes, then it's we could do that and have a guy on a cheap deal for 4 years as opposed to paying Dak 5 years, 150, 160, whatever $1 million. So again, it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out for both sides with the Cowboys and Dak. Because again, if Dak feels disrespected, maybe he felt disrespected this offseason, we really don't know. Obviously, he said all the right things to the public, but if he felt disrespected in the way his contract negotiation was handled, then that could lend itself to this offseason, and maybe that could cause some friction in negotiation, and maybe they don't get a long-term deal done in Dallas with him. And like I said, same thing is that if the Cowboys are like, hey, look, we were willing to pay you this, but then you got hurt, so now we're going to drop it off, which I hope they don't do because that would be wrong, in my opinion. But again, business isn't not everything that's right. Business is not about what's right. It's about what makes the most sense financially. So, like I said, I could see the Cowboys being a little bit more stingy, which again, I hope they don't do, and we'll see. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's just a shame for Dak. It's a shame for the NFL because, like I said, he was playing great. So you want to see, especially in the NFL, you want to see a good quarterback playing. He was playing well at the quarterback position. And that's obviously what draws in eyes, draws in viewers, draws in the money, things like that. So, like, that stinks for the Cowboys and for the NFL. But mainly it stinks for Dak because, again, he was having a great year, was going to use this year potentially to translate that into long-term financial gain, whether for himself, whether for the Cowboys or for another franchise, whoever wanted to sign him as a free agent. And now he still might get that to some degree, but maybe not as much as he could have gotten had he had another 5,000-yard season, 30, 40 touchdowns. He leads the Cowboys to the playoffs, things like that. So, like I said, it stinks for them. Like I said, they have Andy Dalton. He won them the game. Well, he helped win the game. The running won them the game. But he helped win the game, and obviously the defense showed up when it had to. But again, they were playing the Giants, and they were down at the time. Or they were down early in that game. So, again, it's hard to say how good the NFC East is at the moment. It still probably stinks. Still probably needs to be defunded. But somebody's going to win the division. And that may be the unfortunate part, is that the Eagles at 1-3-1, not out of it. Only, like a game back, I think, of the Cowboys at 2-3. And, like, again, through 5 games, that's a disaster. And they're going to lose next week to the Ravens. So, like, they're going to be 1-4-1. And they won't, like, be complete. Like, usually 1-4-1 through 6 games, you're done in the division. Like, there's a chance that the 2 teams below them will both be 1-5 because the Giants could beat Washington. And then the Cowboys could beat the Cardinals, could lose the Cardinals. It's really up in the air. So, like I said, that division is going to be a mess. Like, that division was not that good last year, and it's going to be a lot worse this year. So, shout out to whoever has to go to the NFC East winner this year in the playoffs. I know they'll be pissed about that. Speaking of quarterback play, I just want to touch on Washington real quick because obviously the whole Dwayne Haskins situation. And Alex Smith got in because they started Kyle Allen. He ended up getting banged up. Alex Smith came in and everyone was all like, rah, rah, this is a great story. This is a great moment. And like, yes, but also I felt afraid for him. And now, I'm not sure if I felt more fear for him than like his family did, but I was like, Alex Smith should not be out there playing quarterback. Like I said, my brother almost lost his leg. And again, shout out to him for persevering, doing all that stuff to get back on the field. But, like I said, if that were me or if that were someone in my family, I'd be like, yo, bro, like, you're good. Like, especially he's not like a young guy. Like, he's played a lot of football. I imagine he's made a decent amount of money. Obviously, again, he wants to show these kids, like, oh, you can put your mind to it. If you get knocked down, you can get back up, things like that. And again, that's a cool thing. But also, like, football is not a safe game. So that could easily happen again. And their offensive line stinks. I believe the Rams had, let me count it, 8 sacks today against Washington. So again, he came out relatively healthy. Granted, Washington didn't play well. They had I think they had their lowest point total of the season, which is again kind of funny, seeing as everyone was like, "Oh, Dwayne Haskins the problem. Dwayne Haskins the problem." Like, yes, but also like Kyle Allen is not that good. Alex Smith, after not playing football for years, is probably the best option. But again, he nearly had his leg amputated. So, don't know how good that of an option that is at this moment. So, yeah, it's just a bit of a mess in the NFC East, to say the least. But shout out to the Rams. They went to 4-1. Goff had a decent day. Like I said, their defensive line was dominant. Aaron Donald had 4 sacks. Excuse me. Didn't mean to shortchange him. And who was this? Troy Reader, some linebacker from Delaware. He had 3 sacks as well. So again, 2 guys combined for 7 sacks, and that usually gets you a dub, especially in a game against a team that's not that good. So yeah, and the late night game, they're just going around the NFC a little bit more. In the late night game, you had Vikings Seahawks, which was, I think someone tweeted this out a while ago, and it's like pretty true. Somebody I think that works for the Ringer. And he was like, the Seahawks literally never play in like a normal game, like just like a regular like football game. Like, I'm not saying it can't be exciting, not to say that it can't be like slow, but it's like their games are always like odd or weird. Like something weird happens, like last second plays is like down to the wires, like weird turnovers, weird moments. And it's been happening like for years, like going back to like the Fail Mary and like different things like that. Like the Seahawks just play like weird games. Like just stuff about like it's always like comes down to the end. It's like never really like. Seahawks don't really blow that many teams out. It doesn't really matter who they are. Like they're always playing in close games, always down to the last minute, always down to the wire for whatever reason, whether they win or lose. It's kind of absurd. And that was no different even against the 1-4, 1-3, now 1-4 Minnesota Vikings. And that's the funny part is Minnesota was dominating the first half of that game. Like they were up big. Well, no, they were up double digits at halftime. Then, like literally in a minute and a half, just everything switched, and the Vikings started turning the ball over, mainly Kirk Cousins. And then next thing you know, like remember I was watching the game. Like Dalvin Cook got hurt in like the third quarter, I believe. I turned because again, and baseball was on, basketball was on, so I was like, all right, let me check out this basketball a little quick, or baseball. I forget which one I was watching. And then I turned back and I'm like, how did they have 20 points? And like that's literally what happened. Like they scored. All right, so they scored a touchdown, Russell Wilson and Will Dissly. Then the Vikings. I think that was the fumble. Yeah, where Kirk Cousins fumbled, and then they scored a touchdown to Metcalf. And then they got a first play interception, and then they scored another, and then Chris Carson scored a touchdown. So, like, again, literally in like a minute and a half, like 2 minutes, they went from down 13 to now leading 21-13. And, of course, obviously, the Vikings come back and they get a touchdown, and it was back and forth from there. Russ had a really bad pick when the score was 26-21. That could have cost them, but they were able to get the fourth down stop, which... Again, I understand both sides of the argument. People are like, oh, we shouldn't have gone for it. Just go for the field goal. And obviously it looks worse when you don't get it. And they take that back. Well, yeah, it definitely looks worse when you don't get the fourth down. And then obviously it looks bad when you lose the game because you didn't go for the field goal to push it to 8, which I do understand. But also the Vikings had been running all over them basically the entire game. It didn't matter who was in there. Even after Dalvin Cook got hurt, they were still able to run the ball fairly well. So you're like, hey, we can get a yard and win this game. Especially when you're 1-3. Like, you don't... I appreciate coaches that aren't playing for the tie. Granted, I said the Seahawks still would need to get 2-point conversion, and they didn't. Funny enough, but at the same time, like if you're 1-3, like no, just go for the win. And like I said, the analytics said that you were better off, and like the analytics basically said your win percentage went no higher if you kick the field goal. So then it's like, well, you might as well just go for it, and your win percentage only dropped by like 15%. That they were showing it on NBC. So again, analytically, it made sense, and just like from a mindset of like a 1-3 team, we're trying to come in on the road, get a big win, to kind of get our season back together. Like, and it's a yard. They needed a yard, a single yard. It was 4th and 1 at the 6-yard line. They needed a single yard. I think it was Cody Barton or somebody at the linebacker. He blew the play up, and Madison wasn't able to get there. And then of course, DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson connect on a bunch of foolishness. Like I said, the one pass down the left sideline, I don't know what 27 was doing that corner. Like, he's lost the ball completely. I'm pretty sure that was either 3rd or 4th down when he caught that. Let me double check. Yeah, it was 4th and 10 when DK Metcalf catches that pass down the left sideline to put them in, to get it to like the 38-yard line. Then obviously a few plays later, then he drops the first touchdown that he could have easily had, and then the ball just popped out. Then on 4th down, he catches the tough one, like around the safety, like on like diving in between like 2 defenders. It was a great catch. So shout out to DK Metcalf. He looks like a supreme receiver. But yeah, like I said, it just hurts when you have that happen and you lose. Because like I said, the Vikings, if they go for it and they get it, then they win the game. No one's questioning it. But again, once you lose, then everybody can question it. And while I understand kicking the field goal there, like in terms of just like, hey, you want to get points, you also want to win the game. And like if they, like I said, if they get it, then that requires you to stop them on 4th down, which wasn't a guarantee. And then now you're going overtime, and it's like we need to get this dub. So, and as Herman Edwards said, you play to win the game. So I understood Mike Zimmer going for it in that moment when your team's 1-3 and you could probably use a big win. It didn't happen, but at least they went for it. So you can at least be happy that your coach is confident in his players to get the job done at that moment. But after we come back here, after this break, we will discuss the AFC side of things, and we got some interesting things to talk about on that side. I mean, the Chiefs don't look as, I don't want to say don't look as strong, but don't look as invincible. That's the word I was looking for. Invincible as I once thought. I want to talk about why that is right after the break. So stay right there.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So potentially, depending on how you felt about the Niners and what happened with them, I will try to touch on them in a little bit. But potentially the most surprising outcome of the day, the Raiders beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Now, like I said, this was this little stretch of games, this 4-game stretch. After the Saints, the Patriots, Bills, Chiefs, and Bucks, and now even the Browns, because the Browns are up to 4-1. Like that stretch was going to tell you a lot about the Raiders and like where they are and how close they are to being a potentially division winner, and also just like a playoff team in general. Obviously now with the 7 teams, and the first 2 games hadn't gone their way. They got beat pretty good by the Patriots, then obviously had a closer one with the Bills, but still were not able to catch that dub. So this was a big one. They needed to get this win to kind of get their season back on track a little bit. Like, again, 2-3 is not like you're not out of it or anything. But, again, you want to show yourself that you can beat a good team. And obviously beat the Saints, though the jury still potentially could be out about them on if they're a good or a great team, something like that. But the Chiefs are a great team. Many people believe that they are the best team in the league. Many people believe that they could be, they could have. A lot of people thought they're almost impossible to beat. Apparently not, because the Raiders found a way to do it. How did that happen? Well, for one, Derek Carr played great. He had 1 interception that was not good, but 22 of 31, 347 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, I don't even think that's not even. It's a legitimate statement that he played better than Mahomes did in this game. And like I said, that doesn't happen that often. Obviously, you could argue that Herbert played better than Mahomes for most of that game, though Mahomes played better at the end. So, like I said, sometimes you can play better than him and you lose anyway, just because the Chiefs are the Chiefs and they usually figure things out. But that wasn't the case in this game. The Raiders were able to withstand the Chiefs' best punch and also punch back. Like, they were down 14-3 early. They were down 21-10 like midway through the second quarter. And then the offense just got rolling. They had a touchdown pass to Waller, a big play to Henry Ruggs, which I think Henry Ruggs had 2 catches for 118 yards and a touchdown. But that's the thing, when one of those catches is a 72-yard bomb, all right, you can make up for the fact that you don't have 5, 10 catches, whatever it is. Like, if you can get 118 yards on 2 catches, like, that kind of big playability opens up the offense for, like, everybody else. Listen, Henry Ruggs did not do a whole lot in this game, but those 2 plays, and like I said, you only had 3 targets on the day. But those plays, they keep the defense honest, they keep the safeties back, they keep the safeties alert, and it opens things up for Waller, opens things up for potentially Aguilar, Renfro, other guys to maybe get and have big moments or make big plays, and then maybe even lightens the box for Josh Jacobs, who didn't have a great day but had 2 touchdowns, both in the fourth quarter, I believe. And so, yeah, like I said, that those kind of big plays, that's why they drafted Henry Ruggs. And they needed Derek Carr to be willing to make those plays, and he was. And like I said, in this game, he was rewarded for them. So that was big for them. But then also the biggest, I mean, not going to say the biggest, but the one big thing was that they were able to get a turnover late in the game. And this was when they had just kicked the field goal to go up 33-24. And it was like, I'm trying to think how much time was left. It was like 6 minutes left, and we know the Chiefs, like, they can score in a breeze. Like, that was not going to be an issue for them. Like, they can get down the field easy. But on like a fourth down play, they were able to get Kansas City to fourth down, and he tried to throw a pass deep to Travis Kelce. And just, because there's a lot of times where Mahomes gets away with stuff, where he's throwing deep over the middle of the field, or he's throwing across his body, he's throwing late. And again, because he has the arm strength, or he's like mobile enough, or can work some sort of magic, usually works out for him. In this case, it did not, and it got picked off by Jeff Heath, who returned it down to the 2-yard line. Josh Jacobs scored the next play, and even when the Chiefs were able to come down the next drive, score in like a minute 30, they just weren't able to get off the field on defense. And like I said, that's the way the Raiders are built. They're built with Josh Jacobs and that offensive line, and the way they're coached, and like the kind of just like the type of football they play. To if you have the lead late, like 4-minute offense, which a lot of coaches and a lot of teams preach about and talk about. Like when you have the ball 4 minutes, can you run the clock out when the team knows you're going to run the ball? Can you run it down their throat and get the dub? And like I said, the Raiders are built to do that, and they were able to do that. And like I said, they never came off the field. They got to a fourth down once after the 2-minute warning, or I guess after 2-minute warning, and they were able to get I guess Derek Carr got a quarterback sneak, if I remember correctly. And got the 1 yard, and then like that sealed the game. But then even then, they got the ball after I thought they tried to onside kick, but no, they didn't. I think they kicked it like kind of middle deep. But then they were able to get they got a first down on 2 plays, and then like that caused the Chiefs to use the last 2 of their timeouts. Then they said they got a first down run, a second down run. The Raiders called a timeout for some odd reason. Don't know why that was. Then they tried to pass. Didn't work out because they had the 2-minute warning. There's no real harm with throwing a pass there as long as it's in bounds. Like as long as you get the 2-minute warning, so it is what it is. And then went for it on fourth down. They got it. And came out of Arrowhead with the dub. So like I said, that's a big win for the Raiders. Big win. Just again to keep them in that playoff hunt, even potentially keep them in the AFC West chase. Because like I said, if you want to win the division, you got to go through Kansas City. You got to go through Arrowhead. And they already beat Kansas City and Arrowhead. So like I said, that's a big step after their last 2 weeks to kind of, like I said, bounce back after playing some of the better teams in the AFC and catching the L. They needed to showcase that, hey, look, we may not be the best team in the AFC, though. Again, we'll see how that plays out, but we still think we compete with any of them. And like I said, if Derek Carr can play like this and they can run the ball and they can get Tommy turnovers on defense, maybe they could be. So, like I said, good win for the Raiders. And like I said, the Chiefs will be fine. Like they'll be all right. Just hopefully their defense doesn't play this poorly again. And another big matchup in the AFC was the Browns-Colts game, and that game was interesting only because the Browns were like dominating it for most of the game, and then like they let the Colts. Hope I didn't say Chiefs. They let the Colts, Browns and Colts. They let the Colts back into it late, and like both quarterbacks were trying their best to like give the game away. Down the stretch of that game. To start the half, Phillip Rivers threw a pick 6, and so that hurt. Then, like I said, Baker threw a pick to let them, to allow them to, and they got a field goal drive after that. The Colts did to bring it to within 7 after they had scored a touchdown on a kickoff return after the pick 6. Like I said, a lot of weirdness in that game. And then the Colts also gave up a safety, so that was odd. But then again, it's late in the fourth. It's 29-20. The Colts are trying to drive to like get close, get to within range. Phillip Rivers again throws a pick, and then Baker Mayfield turns around the next drive, throws a pick of his own. They were able to get a field goal on the ensuing drive, but then the Browns were able to drive down, get enough, chew enough clock, get further enough down the field to kick a field goal of their own, and that basically sealed it. But yeah, neither quarterback played great. Phillip Rivers went back to his Los Angeles ways from last year, where he was the reason why his team was out of the game, as opposed to being a part of the reason why they were in the game. Like, that was his big issue last year, was that he threw too many interceptions. And the last few games, his defense was good enough to where it hadn't really mattered. Well, and he didn't have to throw that much. They didn't have to force that many things. But in this game, like I said, had the pick six on an out route, and it was just like, I don't know why he threw that. And like I said, had another pick later that, again, had cost them the game. And like I said, that was the big thing with the Chargers last year, and that's why I wasn't too big on the Colts getting him, because I was like, I don't know how much better that he is than Brissett. Personally, at this stage in his career, obviously, he's a Hall of Fame type talent. I don't know if he'll get in, but he's a Hall of Fame type talent, something like that. And obviously, Brissett isn't that. But at this point in their career, if Philip Rivers is going to turn the ball over, throw a lot of picks like he did last year, then like you're not really going to win a whole lot of games. Now, again, he hadn't. Like I said, leading up to this game, I think he only had like one pick on the season. Should have been better. But then, surprise, surprise, the game he throws a pick in, I think he had 3 picks on the season. So again, and in that first game that they lost to Jacksonville, he threw 2 picks in that one. So again, it's not like he hadn't been the reason they lost before. Just in the other game where he threw a pick, Kirk Cousins threw 3, so it really didn't matter. And so the defense hadn't given up more than 11 points in the last 3 games, so they had kind of been able to mask some of that. And also, I mean, if he didn't get the pick 6, you take that 7 away. Now they're only down 2 when they're driving there at the end. Like I said, I don't know if that would have mattered and that they would have gotten within range to kick a field goal or anything like that. Well, I mean, it didn't really, like I said, it didn't really, or maybe it causes the Colts to be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, the Browns to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't really know. Like I said, if you're going to get this Phillip Rivers that turns the ball over, that's throwing interceptions, that's costing your team possessions and maybe the game, then the Colts are going to be in a tough spot, though luckily for them, the division isn't like that great, so like they're still in decent shape. And for the Colts, I mean for the Browns, it was good to get a win, even though your quarterback didn't play like great, and you didn't run the ball like great either. Like they ran it enough, they ran for like over 100 yards, but it wasn't like what they had been doing. But the defense came up with timely turnovers and made big plays. That didn't really matter. And like I said, the quarterback and Baker wasn't his best. He's obviously been better, but he also didn't like kill them. So, like I said, that helped. But yeah, it's just something like you're gonna have to kind of pay attention to that because, like if the defense can do that, great. But you can't count on a pick 6 every game to kind of do away or undo some of your own mistakes as an offense. And you can't count on it every game. Some teams can. I don't know if the Browns are one of them. I don't think their defense had been like that up until this point. I could be wrong about that. But again, regardless, you got to find good teams find a way to win games, even when everybody doesn't play great. And that's what the Browns were able to do in this game. I don't know if that means they're a great team, but they are 4-1, so that's good. Granted, their one loss, they got smoked by the Ravens, who are in their own divisions. That hurts, and I think they play the Steelers coming up next, who are undefeated at the moment. They're 4-0. Obviously, they got the bye week because of the Titans, who I think will be playing. I think they're going to play Tuesday, but like we'll see if that game actually goes off. But yeah, so the Steelers are 4-0 after they win over the Eagles, who, I mean, again, you could argue how good the Eagles are, but their offense showed up. So shout out to the Eagles and their offense for showing up. Obviously, it doesn't look like it because Carson Wentz had like 2 interceptions, but the first interception, I mean, should have been legal contact. Zach Ertz got hit and stopped his route, and then obviously where he would have been is where the ball went, and he ended up getting picked. And the second one was on 4th and 20. Like there's the last like 30 seconds left in the game, or like not 30 seconds, but like it was the end of the game. You're trying to throw it up, hope your guy can run under or get pass interference something. It was too far. It was basically a punt. Like it really didn't matter at that point. So again, the stats don't look that great, but the offense played well. They got 29 points. Like I said, it's not like any of them with like a pick 6 or anything like that. All of it was offensive touchdown. All of it was offensive scoring. They had the receiver Fulgham had 10 catches for 152 yards and a touchdown. Miles Sanders had like a 76-yard run. So, like I said, the Steelers weren't perfect today, but the rookie receiver Chase Claypool looked like a stud. Looked like second coming. I don't even know who. I'm not going to go out here and call him like T.O. or Randy Moss, anything like that. But he was, again, if they didn't have him, they lose this game. Because He had 7 catches, 110 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also ran in a touchdown like a little reverse. Like I said, they couldn't cover him. Didn't matter who they put on him. They didn't double him, which I would have done, but that's whatever. But like he was unstoppable. They couldn't. The Eagles had no answer for him at all. They went to him in a lot of clutch times, especially obviously that last touchdown there at the end. He went like on a seam route in a cover 2, beat the linebacker who shouldn't have been on the field, but again, not going to go off on an Eagles rant at this moment. Beat the linebacker, and again, the Big Ben did what he did all game, and that was fine Chase Claypool, and it worked. Like I said, the biggest thing for the Steelers is just how good they were on third down, and I don't know if that is more a good thing for them or just like an indictment on the Eagles. But I believe it was that he was like Big Ben was like 13 of 13 on third down, something like that. Like again, their third down offense was very good, and that allowed them to sustain drives and keep the ball, and obviously end up eventually scoring points. So even though like again, Big Ben didn't have the greatest output in terms of like yards and things like that, very efficient, 27 to 34. Like I said, only 1 sack, 3 interceptions, no turnovers. They didn't really get a whole lot on the ground. A lot of it was like reverses and things like that. But like I said, when Chase Claypool was dominating like that, when no one else really did a whole lot, no one else had over 40 yards. But like I said, Claypool had 110, and they didn't turn the ball. Well, they had the one turnover from Ebron, the fumble, kind of helped get the Eagles back in the game, potentially. But yeah, it was just like again, it was a good win for the Steelers in terms of again, even their defense didn't have his best stuff. Still got a lot of pressure. I think they had 5 sacks, something like that. Yeah, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 11 quarterback hits. So again, the pressure was still there. Their D-line, I might have called the Eagles the best D-line. I was wrong. It's clear the Steelers at this point. Like they have the best pass rush in the league. Point blank period. Doesn't matter. T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree, Tuitt, like the corners. Hilton had a sack. Like he's good off the blitz. Cam Hayward. Like doesn't really matter who it is. Like they can get to the passer. And T.J. Watt didn't even have he only had 1 sack in this game, but he had 3 tackles for loss. Like again, they stifled the run game of the Eagles. So like I said, they can get after anybody, and that's gonna that matters in this league. If you can get quarterbacks uncomfortable and cause them to make errant throws and make poor decisions, that can lead to turnovers, which again the Steelers did at a high rate last season. And if they can do that same thing or a similar level with better quarterback play, now we're talking about a legitimate contender, not only in the AFC North but in the AFC as a whole. Assuming Big Ben can play at this a relatively good level throughout the entire season. So that'll be a big matchup next week. Steelers, Browns. It's currently a 1 o'clock game on CBS, but that'll be a big one. Because again, the Browns they get off the snide in the North, having already lost 1 to the Ravens. And be a shout out to them. And also, I guess the last thing I'll touch on is one shout out to Texas for getting their first win of the post Bill O'Brien era. 30-24 over the Jaguars, though. Again, you could argue how good the Jaguars are. But Sean Watson looked good outside of the picks. He did throw a couple of picks. But over 350, 3 touchdowns. David Johnson looked pretty good. Brandon Cooks has his signature 1 out of every 4 or 5 games, ball out, something like that. 8 for 161 and touchdown. The defense got after Minshew, 3 sacks, made him uncomfortable all night or all day. So like I said, shout out to them for getting that dub, and also shout out to the Dolphins. They took it to the Niners, which is a big blow for the Niners. They had to bench Jimmy G in this game, though. Again, I don't know if that's because he was coming back from injury, so maybe he wasn't exactly where he needed to be at or whatever. But like I said, the Dolphins put it to him. The game was never really that close. I said Jimmy G got benched at halftime. It was 30-7 at halftime. Like the Miami Dolphins dominated through and through. I don't know if this is there's probably not consistency because again, Fitzmagic, as you know, he has his every once in a while he'll have a great game. This was happened to be that day. 22 of 28, 350, 3 touchdowns. In the end, sometimes if you just catch Fitzmagic on the bad day, for you, obviously a good day for him, then you're in trouble. And they said there's not really much you can do. He's just going to make every throw. He's going to hit guys. He's going to score. He's going to be running all over the place. It's going to be a mess. And you're going to lose. And that's happened to the Niners. Again, their offense didn't really show up, in part because Jimmy G was terrible. 7 of 17, 2 interceptions, both bad. 3 sacks. Like I said, had a 15 passer rating. So I don't know what that means moving forward. I don't know if this is just like a one-time benching or just like, hey, maybe he's not right. Like he's still come back from I think it was the ankle. I'm still come back from the injury benching kind of thing. But again, for a team that was in the Super Bowl last year to now be 2-3 in a division where the leader is undefeated at 5-0 and the Rams are 4-1, and now even the Cardinals, who you lost to already, are 3-2. Like I said, you're now talking about being last place in your division, which obviously is not where you'd want to be at coming off of a season where you made the Super Bowl. So, shout out to the Dolphins for, again, the big dub. I guess they hold off on the Tua toss for one more week. At least, again, or at least until Fitzmagic has another bad game, which could be next week, for all we know. That's just how Fitzmagic is. He has like 3 or 4 great games every year. You don't know when they're going to happen. Though next week they play the Jets, they're probably going to win that game. But who knows? Who knows at this point? But yeah, we just had a lot of good stuff. Obviously, we have we have one Monday night game in Chargers Saints with no Michael Thomas. Apparently got into a fight with a defensive player, so they'll be without him. He's supposed to make his return. So they'll see what they can do with the Chargers. And then you have the Tuesday game, Bills-Titans, which that should be a good one, assuming they can play it because like of the COVID. But if they can play, that should be a good game. It's a shame because now the Thursday night game that's supposed to be Bills-Chiefs is now I think moved to Monday. And this one, which again makes sense only because you got to give the Bills some time to recover. So that game will be Monday at 5. Don't know why it's so early, but hey, it is what it is. At least it's in prime time, so that'll be... Well, it's on like national TV, as in it's on Fox, so that should be a good one. As well, Chiefs-Bills next week. Especially with the Chiefs coming off a loss. They're probably going to want to try to show out and remind everybody who they are against the Bills. So that should be a good one. But yeah, we'll see if that game goes off on Tuesday. So still a little more football to look forward to as you enter into a new week. But after we come back here, or after this next break, we will discuss the NBA Finals. Because it is now over. The Lakers have taken care of business. So we'll talk about Game 6, even though there's not a whole lot to talk about. And I guess I'll do give a little ode to the Heat for a great season. And kind of like talk about what their future could potentially look like before I get into heavy talk about my LeBron take. So we'll discuss all that right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So Game 6, NBA Finals, Lakers Heat. The final score is not indicative of how lopsided this game was. And again, such is life. It happens. I think the Heat they ran into a great defense in the Lakers. The Lakers played phenomenal defense in that first half. The Heat had all of 36 American points. Yes, playing by 2s and 3s, like they had 36 points in that first half. The Lakers just smothered them. No one could really get going offensively, and just one of those situations where the Heat, obviously, because we haven't talked about Game 5 yet, but the Heat gave it all, everything they had in that Game 5, and they needed to because again they were on the brink of elimination. And though obviously I thought the Lakers would finish it off, I did originally say the Lakers in 6, so I didn't feel too bad about the Heat pulling that game off because I thought it was like possible. Obviously, again, it would be a different story if Bam and Dragic were both healthy the entirety of the series. Though again, the Lakers still win, but like it would have been a much more competitive 6 in my opinion. Even though Dragic played in this game, shout out to him for getting back out there on the floor. I mean, he shouldn't have been out there, but hey, it is what it is. Just try to, give them some little energy and minutes and things like that. But again, outside of Bam, like no one really played that good on offense. Jimmy Butler had 12 points, Crowder had 12 points, Duncan Robinson had 10 points, Hero had 7. He was struggling. Like I said, none didn't give him anything. Didn't give him a whole lot. Only had 8. Dragic had 5, which hey, good for him for at least getting those 5. But it was only 5. Solomon Hill had 5, basically at the end of the game, which, I mean, those don't really count. Olynyk had 9. So like I said, they just weren't able to get anything going offensively. They shot 44% from the field, 36% from 3. Like that just wasn't going to get the job done. Like I said, especially not in the first half where the Lakers were doing everything. I think they had 5 guys in double figures in the first half. Like LeBron was still LeBron. He had 28, 14, and 10 in the game, but obviously he was good in the first half. KCP was good in the first half. Rondo was really good in that first half. Anthony Davis did Anthony Davis type things, which again is just get enough points, get a lot of rebounds, things like that. But like I said, once it was clear that Rondo was going to be hitting threes and KCP was hitting threes, and I think Danny Green hit a 3 or 2 in the first half. It was just the Heat, you just knew it was over. And again, shout out to the Heat for doing what they had to do to even get to this point. A lot of people didn't think they were going to get this far, whether pre-bubble or post-bubble. Obviously, again, I thought they could be dangerous in the East just due to the fact that again they shot very well from 3 and they played solid defense. But again, I'm not going to sit here and act like I picked them to get to the finals before the season started or anything like that, or before the bubble, or the playoffs started or anything like that. I thought they could potentially upset some teams, but I'm not going to sit here and act like I knew the Heat were going to do this. I don't know if anybody really outside of Miami thought the Heat could do this, or maybe and outside of Miami as in the fan base and outside of Miami as in the team. No one else really thought they could do this. A lot of people thought it was going to be the Bucks, could be the Celtics, different teams like that. But again, shout out to the Heat for getting this far. Again, obviously there's no real moral victories when you lose and things like that. Like I said with Herm, you play to win the game, so you want to win. If you get to the finals, you want to win. You don't want to lose. Though, again, there's still a lot of solace to be taken in the fact that getting to the finals in general. Like I said, there's a lot to take away from that. And like I said, the Heat, in my opinion, have a bright future. They really do. Like I said, a lot of their younger guys getting experience in these finals early on in their career could be beneficial to them if the Heat continue to be good. Bam, Hero, Nunn, if he's still on the team, Duncan Robinson, those kind of guys. It's going to be good for them to get this kind of whether it's just playoff experience in general. So again, they're not kind of caught off guard. They know what to expect in the playoffs. Though this year's playoffs are obviously different than any other playoffs and are different than any future playoffs will be. But again, it's still playoffs. It's still high stakes. The games are still potentially elimination, win or go home, things like that. The stakes are the same, but obviously the crowd and things like that weren't the same. So again, it'll be interesting to see how, and that's obviously been a conversation on social media, is how these players will play when fans are back. Because again, even in the NFL or college football, which we'll get to that later on the show, but even the NFL, again, some stadiums have fans, some stadiums don't. That could play a factor. Again, it's not the same, but that could play a factor. And in certain things, and again, all you had was families there, things like that. It wasn't really a whole lot of fans. And so again, it's going to take some transitioning after playing in your first playoffs like that to now playing in playoffs with where you're traveling, you're going to different arenas, you're going into hostile environments, things like that. That's going to be a new thing for them. So again, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. But just in general, getting this playoff experience, getting this finals experience will be good for them because they can build on this. Like I said, this was year 1 of the Jimmy Butler era in Miami. Again, don't know how long it's going to last, don't know how long it's going to be for, but with a coach like Spo, who again obviously is going to be there for the long haul, a player like Jimmy Butler, who again has kind of erased some of the past talks about his him being hard to work with and him not being a good teammate and him not being a good leader and him not being a winner. Like, all that's gone now. And again, there's certain things you can say about Jimmy Butler, like he's not a great shooter, things like that. Like, you could say he needs to be more aggressive at times, different things. Like, there are certain things you can say about Jimmy Butler, but you can't say that he's not a winner. Obviously, he didn't win the championship, but you can't say like he's not a winner because he's been to the finals. You can't say that he's not a leader because he was I would argue Bam is their best player, but he was the number one guy on a team that went to the finals. Like, that's not something very many people can say that aren't great in the league. Maybe when you look back over the course of finals teams in the last, just say even the last decade, you think about it. All right, you got Lakers, Celtics, Hall of Famers on those. You got Mavs, Heat, Hall of Famers on both sides there. Heat, Thunder, Heat, Spurs, Warriors, and Cavs for all those years, and then obviously like the Toronto team that they had Kawhi and a good mix, and also Warriors got hurt that year. But like I said, just look at the teams that made the finals the last few years. None of those teams really none of those teams I would say haven't had a Hall of Fame player on their roster. I said Toronto might be the only exception, but I think Kawhi probably gets in. And maybe potentially Lowry or Marc Gasol, somebody like that. But again, you look at the rest of those teams, the Warriors, the Heat, Cavs, Thunder, Spurs, Mavs, even like again, Lakers, Celtics in 2010. Like, all those guys have Hall of Fame talents on their rosters. Because again, getting to the finals is not easy. And then again, people make it seem like, oh, this was... And I know people are talking about the Lakers trip, which I'll talk about in a second, like how easy it was, like how easy their road was, blah blah blah, whatever. But again, getting to the playoffs isn't that well. Getting to the playoffs is a little bit simpler, but winning in the playoffs is not that simple. Because then, if it was, a lot more people would have rings, a lot more great players would have rings. Getting to the finals is not easy because again, you got a lot of different things you got to go through. You got to go through different teams, different matchups, different things like that. Like, it's not a simple thing. So for you to be the best player on a team that gets to the finals, like, you have to be a very good player in the league. And like I said, I think Jimmy Butler cemented his case and his stake as one of, and maybe not certainly like lock top 10, but definitely at least top 15. And again, there's probably guys like, again, you talk about like a Paul George, who many people thought before the season, like, oh, he's better, like Paul George is better than him. Like, is he really though? Like again, guys like that where you're just like, they haven't done what Jimmy did. And again, they were in the bubble. I will give you that. But again, a 5 seed getting to the finals is, whether bubble, no bubble, doesn't matter. 5 seed getting to the finals is not normal. It doesn't happen that often. Like, teams like the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, like, those are the teams that make it to the finals most years in the NBA. Because again, over the course of a 7-game series, usually talent wins out. And usually having the best player in the series matters. And, well, it definitely mattered, obviously, when LeBron was running through the East. And then even out West, it was like, all right, the Thunder had KD and Russ and Harden. Then the Spurs just had their 3 Hall of Famers, plus Pop, maybe the greatest coach ever, and a young Kawhi. Plus, like, solid role players in Danny Greens, Patty Mills, different things like that. Then the Warriors had Steph and Clay, and Draymond and Iggy. And then obviously they got KD, things like that. Like I said, the Toronto Raptors were just like a weird. They I mean, again, they weren't an aberration or like a 1-year wonder or 1-hit wonder, things like that. Because again, they were just like a perfect storm for them. Like, they got Kawhi, they had a good mix of players, they got a good coach, different things. They had the 4 bounce. Like, certain things went their way. Like, the Warriors got hurt, like different things like that. But again, I think a lot has been done to repair or enhance the reputation of Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat and a lot of players on the Heat. So again, that's good to even the coach, because again, Spo, obviously a lot of people talked about like him being a good coach, potentially being a Hall of Fame caliber coach, things like that. But again, all his success really in the playoffs was tied to LeBron. And now you got him going to the finals with Jimmy Butler and Bam and Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and Dragic and Kendrick Nunn and Iggy and Jay Crowder. Like, that's, on paper, that's not like a championship roster yet. Again, maybe like when Bam's like 25, 26 and Tyler Hero's like 23, 24, like something like, well, maybe a little bit further on, maybe. But again, right now, that's not supposed to be a championship roster. Potentially. Again, obviously, you play the games on the court, so what's on paper doesn't really matter. But on paper, like, that's not like, you're not thinking of that, like, oh my gosh, like, this team could win a championship. And again, they didn't, obviously. But, again, just the Heat getting there, and it is big. And also, just it could be big because, again, they're an attractive destination. You could potentially have some cap space soon, I think the summer of 2021, for like a Giannis, maybe. Or, like I said, if you got a disgruntled star, and like if things don't go well in Washington this year, you want to get Bradley Beal. Though I don't know how that would work. But I guess you could move Jimmy to the 3. You take out like a Jay Crowder or somebody. Don't know how that would work. I don't know about that. You could like Donovan Mitchell, like something like, again, they have the assets where they have these players like the Nuns of the world. Duncan Robinsons, if you want to flip that, I don't know if you're going to be able to flip them for a star, though. Again, they don't really have as many picks because Thunder have a lot of some of their picks. But again, they've shown themselves to be an attractive location. They're going to be a place that players want to play. They're going to be a team players are going to want to play for. A franchise players are going to want to play for. And again, because before we're just like, oh, that was LeBron. Now with Jimmy Butler, again, not that Jimmy Butler's a bad player, but again, you showed that, like, hey, look, no, like, we have something here. Spo's a good coach. We had a good foundation, good locker room, good structure organizationally. Like, hey, if you're not happy where you're at, like, we could make it worth your while. Plus, we're in Miami. Which, I mean, I don't think anybody has turned down a chance to live in Miami if they can obviously afford it, and athletes can afford it. So, like I said, the Heat, obviously this wasn't going to be their year. They didn't have enough. Especially, obviously, once guys got hurt. They just didn't have enough. But again, their future, assuming guys take the necessary steps to continue to grow and continue to improve their games and things like that, their future continues to look bright. And I would imagine, and a lot of people said this, like Pat Riley got one last trick up his sleeves. Again, I don't know if that means landing Giannis. I don't know if that means landing another type of like that caliber of star. But like I said, I think it's possible, especially after the success they had this year. It's hard for me to be like, no, the Heat are done after this. Like, no, they could be back. I don't know about next year, but they could be back very soon. So again, we'll see how that plays out. But again, shout out to the Heat for getting the job done and getting to this far. Obviously, the Lakers got the job done. So shout out to them for that. Happy for Dwight finally gets his ring, so we can stop. Like, people can stop disrespecting him and trying to talk down on, like, oh, is he a Hall of Famer? Is he not a Hall of Famer? Like, yes, he was a Hall of Famer before this ring. But obviously, the championship helped solidify that, and he was a big part of that. Again, he did start for a decent amount of the finals. Or I think actually he started all the finals games, if I remember correctly. Just want to double check that. Or did they start small this game? Oh, no, they started small this game. So, like I said, he didn't start every game in finals, but he was a starter after they moved away from JaVale. So it's not like he was just like, this wouldn't have been like a Tracy McGrady ring with the Spurs where like he was just like on the roster kind of thing. Like, no, he was a big part of why they were good in the playoffs and also good during the regular season. So shout out to him for that. But again, Dwight, 8-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time All-Defensive Team, 5-time rebound champ, 2-time block champ. Like, he was a Hall of Famer before this. But again, it was cool for him to get that moment, especially in Orlando where he played before, to get the ring in that's, again, not the same arena or things like that, but in that same city is pretty cool. After you can see that in the locker room videos, there's obviously a lot of them. He was very emotional. Just knowing what he's been through in his career, kind of the way people talk about him, where people disrespect him. And now, again, he's an NBA champion. You can't really say anything about him. I mean, you people will still talk trash about you, but again, you can't say as much. Shout out to him. Shout out to Anthony Davis, because he's a guy that I have believed since his Kentucky days could be one day the best player in the league. And he may very well end up being that. We don't know. We don't know how he'll come back next year and how like the Stephs and the KDs of the world will come back, though. What Breonna Stewart's done makes me a little, makes me a bit more of a believer that after 12 to 18 months off Achilles surgery, like KD might be 90% of what he was. Obviously, Breonna Stewart was much younger. But again, if 90% KD is still easily a top 5 player in the league, so there is that. But yeah, shout out to AD. He was clearly emotional. This is what he came to LA for, was for this opportunity. That's what he didn't feel like he was getting in New Orleans, the chance to compete for championships, the chance to win. and that's what he came to LA to do. And he, again, obviously was great. Shout out to him. Like I said, who else do I feel good for? I obviously feel good for the Lakers as a whole, just because everything that revolved around the team with the passing of Kobe and things like that. So shout out to them. Obviously, shout out to LeBron. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I feel happy for, just from the Lakers roster. Oh, also, I don't know if I'm necessarily happy for him per se, but Rondo now is I think he's the first player I thought they said to get a ring with those Celtics and the Lakers, the two most storied franchises in the league. Long history, a lot of championships between them, and he's the only player to now get a ring with both teams. So shout out to him for that. Again, LeBron has now helped two former Celtics get rings in Ray Allen and Rajon Rondo, so I know they won't hate him anymore. Paul Pierce and KG might still hate Ray Allen for going to the Heat, and I don't know how they feel about Rondo going to the Lakers and winning with LeBron, but again, I know Rondo can't hate LeBron and Ray Allen can't hate LeBron. He added to their legacies. So, shout out to Rondo for that, because that's pretty cool just to be a part of that kind of history. But yeah, like I said, the game wasn't that exciting just because the Lakers were dominant. It was just clear that they were like, all right, we gave y'all game 5. We're going to come out. We're just going to get this over with nice and early, so we don't have nothing to worry about. And there's no reason to play around. If you can win the championship, just go out there and get it done. Like I said, I think the Heat just ran out of gas. Like, they just, at a certain point, they just didn't have the firepower to keep up, especially with their guys a little bit banged up and Jimmy Butler having to play 45, 46 minutes every game. Like, that's, with only one day off in between games, it's going to wear on your body. And same thing for all those guys. Like, and obviously the bubble and everything that's going on. And before I just transition into my next topic about LeBron and his GOAT status, shout out to Adam Silver, because as we're seeing with the MLB, we're having to shuffle games around. Things are getting a little hectic these last couple of weeks. MLB had their issues early on, and obviously they've straightened some things out from there. But all the sports in the bubble, so not just NBA, but NHL, WNBA, the Women's Soccer League, the MLS, like all those sports that had bubbles, like they went off without a hitch. Like, yeah, maybe something got a little weird at the beginning, but once the season got started, once the bubble got going, everything was great. So shout out to Adam Silver. I was, as you know, if you listen to old episodes of the podcast, I was very much anti-bubble. I did not think it was going to work. I was very afraid of what would happen if they let COVID in. But since COVID never came in, they were good to go. So again, shout out to Adam Silver. He got this done. Again, obviously people talk about the ratings and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care about the ratings because, again, I'm not financially invested in that manner. I just wanted to watch the basketball, and the basketball was superb in the bubble. So shout out to the NBA for that. Like I said, shout out for them for getting this done, because this wasn't easy, this wasn't simple. It was tiring, taxing on a lot of different guys in many different ways. And like I said, they were able to get the job done. So shout out to the NBA, shout out to Adam Silver for getting through the season. And like I said, just shout out to all the leagues, NHL, WNBA, NWSL, MLS, all the sports that had bubbles. Shout out to all you guys for getting the job done, because you showed that, like, hey, look, if you test, if you wear a mask, you social distance, you put in strict guidelines and requirements, you could have no COVID cases and everything could go swimmingly. And like I said, it's not going to translate to national level, but hey, shout out to those sports for getting through their championships nice and easy. So after we come back here, we will discuss LeBron's GOAT status. And where, like I said, I'll tell you where I think he is. Because I know, obviously, some people have MJ, some people have LeBron. I'm going to tell you what side of the fence I fall on after the break. So stay right there.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, we got to have a conversation. We have to at this point. LeBron has now won his 4th championship. With his 3rd different team. And has now won 1 in each conference. Now, whoever you think the GOAT is, whether it's LeBron, whether it's MJ, whether it's Kareem, Magic, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, doesn't really matter to me. Whoever you think it is, there's not really much I can say or anybody's going to say that's really going to change your opinion. Honestly, at this point, most people have kind of already got themselves on the fence, and if you aren't a LeBron guy, then you're in whatever goalpost. You just move the goalpost until you eventually get to a point where you're just like, I give up. But again, at this point, it's like, he needed to win 2, then he needed to come back from 3-1, then he needed to win 1 and with the Lakers, and now people still moving and blah blah blah, whatever. That's not my point. My point is that whether or not you think LeBron is the actual GOAT or not, because again, if you don't think it's LeBron, most people think it's MJ. Whoever you think it is, there is a conversation to be had. And that's the biggest point of all of this at this moment, is that there's a conversation that we need to have. It's not just, at least to me, at this point, again, obviously, I have lived through, or Kobe, obviously I didn't mention Kobe in the GOAT talk, but he's some people's GOATs. And obviously, I didn't see any of Jordan live. I've seen a lot of LeBron live. Obviously, most of the stuff I've seen was highlights and things like that, or just watching, if I wanted to watch old games or things like that. That's very long way I could watch or could see what MJ did, or watching documentaries or things like that, like The Last Dance or other things. Will kind of try to tell me about his impact and things like that. So again, there's no replicating living through that. As I said, I don't begrudge anybody older than me that says it's MJ, because I get it. But again, my point is that there's a conversation that we need to have. On top, for one, his career is not even over. LeBron is 35 in year 17. Obviously, as many people in whether talking heads on TV shows or just on social media like to discuss. Obviously, year 17, blah, whatever. Obviously, he's well on into his career. So again, he's not a young guy anymore. But also he's probably going to end up top 2, maybe even the highest scorer in the league. Probably going to pass Kareem if he plays 3 or 4 more seasons, which I know he says he wants to play with his son, or he's playing the league with his son. I don't know if we're playing on the same team. We're playing the league with his son, and obviously we don't know if the draft rules will be changed by that point to allow guys to go straight out of high school, things like that, or if Bronny will be ready to go straight out of high school. He might have to go to college for years. That happens. I think Bronny's a sophomore now, so that would be 3 to 4 more years, which based on what we've seen, LeBron could probably play another 3 or 4 more years. Granted, he's not going to play at this level, but he could be in the league 3 or 4 more. We saw Vince Carter still playing until 20 plus years in the league. Again, it's not impossible for him to do. But again, if that's what he wanted to do, I'm not going to say that's what he's going to want to do. But I know that's what he said he wanted to do, and we'll see if it happens. But like I said, that's still a possibility. So by the time he retires, he will most likely be the NBA's leading scorer, be top 5 in assists, up there on rebounds. He already has the most playoff games played. He'll probably be top in every playoffs category, or if not at the top, near the top of all-time playoff categories. I believe they said he had something 11 triple-doubles in the finals, something like that. It's some absurd number. Obviously, him and AD this year were the first pair of teammates to average 25 points, 50% shooting in the same postseason. Him and AD are the first teammates to finish first and second in postseason scoring since Shaq and Kobe did it. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of, when you look at the record books, there's going to be a lot of records that LeBron will hold. But whenever he retires, like I said, whether it's in 3 years, whether it's in 4 years, whether it's in 5 years, 10, whatever the number is, he's going to hold a lot of the all-time records, which I think is going to matter when you go down to the all-time. And like I said, just looking at his if you look at his career up until this point, like don't even get to like his all time, like where he ranks all time, like scoring and assists and different things like that. Like I said, we will have to wait until his career is over to get like the full picture and like the official numbers on that. But just look at his resume as of this moment, including the championship. Just like look at his awards situation. He won Rookie of the Year. He won an All-Star. He's won 2 All-Star Game MVPs, I think. No, 3. He's won 3. He's not won again. I think he won 4 Finals MVPs. Obviously, the only one that has more is Jordan. Obviously, he's won 1, 2, 3. I think he's won 4 MVPs. He has won 4 MVPs. He's been an All-Star 16 times. Was a scoring champion once. Was the 6th champion this year. All-NBA 16 times. Made 6 All-Defensive teams. Like I said, the only thing's really missing is the Defensive Player of the Year, which he could have gotten. I think that was the Marc Gasol one. He could have gotten it then. He didn't. Is what it is. So that's really the only thing he's missing. As opposed to MJ's accolades. But when you look at his accolades, MJ is a 10-time scoring champ, so obviously he's not going to have that. 3-time steals champ, 14-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defensive Team, 3-time All-Star Game MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time MVP, Rookie of the Year, 6 Finals MVP. So he could catch him potentially because, again, I think this is going to be an interesting point. When you look at, again, it's not completely uncomparable, but when you look at the Seattle Storm and Sue Bird, obviously Sue Bird is not the MJ of the WNBA, but when you see what they can do at the end of your career to be paired with a great young star in terms of your success, like she's won 2 of the last 3 championships, and the one year that she didn't win was the year that her and Breanna Stewart were both hurt. But yes, again, when you're later on in your career, sometimes again you can still have your great moments, and that's what she's done throughout the finals and the playoffs and things like that. Like she still has great moments in her, but she doesn't have to do a whole lot of the heavy lifting anymore because she has Breanna Stewart there. And after I think she had won at least one championship before that. I could be wrong about that, though. But I thought she won at least one championship before the last couple. But again, AD could be his Breanna Stewart in that, like, it can allow him to kind of take a backseat sometimes. Again, he's still going to be LeBron, so he's still going to dominate games when he has to. But as we saw throughout the regular season, because again, basically AD led them in like almost every statistical category, but like I think assists, obviously. Even throughout the postseason, there were games where he was clearly the best player on the floor for the Lakers. And I think that's going to happen a lot more as the years go on, is that assuming him and AD stay together, which I think AD probably will stay with LeBron as long as he's in LA. He can help extend LeBron's career in terms of he doesn't have to do everything all the time. Like that, the reason why he left Cleveland that last year was because he basically carried that team by himself to the finals. Like that 2018 Cavs team was not that good. It should not have gotten to the finals, but it did because it had LeBron. Obviously, last year they missed the playoffs, but this year they made it to the playoffs and won the finals, mainly because of LeBron, but also because he had Anthony Davis. Like I mentioned, I don't think they win or they get to this finals if Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Kuzma, not Kuzma because he's on the roster. Shout out to him. Josh Hart, those type of guys, or in whoever they pick with the 4th pick, whether it's DeAndre Hunter or Cam Reddish or whoever. You want to use the 4th, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, whoever. You want to use the 4th pick on. Like, I don't think that team gets to the finals. Not in the West. I'm not saying they wouldn't make the playoffs, things like that. But again, no guarantee because you still do have LeBron. But again, LeBron have to do too much of the heavy lifting on a nightly basis. And like I said, with AD, he won't have to do that going forward. Like, he can easily transition to it being AD's team with LeBron just being there, and he can be the guy. And like I said, that could help extend his career to now. All right, so he's won 4. Who's to say he can't win another 1, maybe even 2, get to 6? Get to 6 wins. Obviously, still have the 6 losses, but who's saying he can't get to 6 wins if he has Anthony Davis with him, who's like I think, 26, 27, something like that, entering the prime of his career, could very easily be the best player in the world, if not next year, within the next 2 to 3 years. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility with the things he can do offensively, coupled with the things he can do defensively. Like him being the best player in the game is not out of the question. Period. He's already like a top 5 player right now. And so him being the best is really not that far fetched. Like him being the MVP next year, not that far fetched in my opinion. Especially if LeBron is willing to take that step back. So I'm saying like that could extend his career. And now, like I said, instead of only having 4 with 4 Finals MVPs, all right, maybe he won't have 6 Finals MVPs, but he could have 6 championships. And kind of thing. Like I said, even without that, I still think we're still at the point where him being in a conversation with Jordan is warranted. Just because, again, at this point, what he's done is unparalleled. Personally, in terms of the hype he had coming in. Again, he was literally a chosen one tattooed on his back. He was the guy, obviously had all the media hype and the Sports Illustrated cover and different things from the moment he stepped into the league. Like, he was supposed to be that guy. And again, not to say that Jordan wasn't supposed to be good. Because obviously he's supposed to be good. But again, he went to college for a couple of years. Like, people knew about him. Like, he had done things before. Like, LeBron walked fresh off of St. Vincent St. Mary campus to the NBA and was supposed to be that guy. And throughout the entirety of his 17-year career, he has been that guy. Like, great on the court, no hiccups, no mishaps, no like terrible seasons, really great off the court, which again, that shouldn't factor into the greatest of all time, but it probably does. His influence, things he's done off the court, with the philanthropy and role model and leadership, different things like that. Like, he's been great. Obviously, the commercials and the way he's branded himself and the ways he's gotten other players to be willing to brand themselves and and obviously he is not in terms of like Clutch. He's not the owner of Clutch Sports, but he helped Rich Paul like create it, and obviously he's doing things with Maverick Carter and the different things they're creating and producing and things like that. Like, he's done everything you ask for a guy that came in with this kind of hype at 18 years old into the league. Like, he's done everything. There's not really much he can do outside of, again, obviously maybe win a couple more finals. But that goes to my second point, is that at a certain point, having him on your team meant you were guaranteed to go to the finals. Like, guaranteed. Because he made 8 straight, he's made 9 out of the last 10, made his first in 2000, 7? So he was, how old was he? In 2007, he was a measly 23 years old, or was it 22? I'm trying to see which year was it that he made the finals. Was it 22 or 23? Let me double check. Okay, it was 22. It was 06, 07 year. He was 22 years old the first time he made the finals. And that's absurd. And then you look at that Cleveland roster. It is not that good. That Cleveland roster is not that good. Look at it. Shannon Brown, Boobie Gibson, Drew Gooden, Larry Hughes, Big Z, Damon Jones, Donnell Marshall, Eric Snow, Varejao. I think this is a younger Varejao. Like I said, you look at this team and it's like, how did this team get to the finals? And again, it makes sense why they got swept by the Spurs. But again, made the finals at 22. Got back, again, obviously has issues, got back to the finals at 26 and made it every year until he was 33. And obviously last year he took the little year off because of the injury and things like that. Then made it back at 35. So from basically 26 to 35, having LeBron on your team meant you were going to the finals. 9 out of the last 10 years, if you had LeBron on your team, you were guaranteed a trip to the finals. Now, you weren't always going to win. I will give you that. You weren't always going to win, but you were guaranteed to go. Like I said, that shows how transcendent of a player and of a talent he is. Like, he transcends team, transcends scheme, transcends coaching. Like, no offense to Jordan, but for every championship, he had Phil Jackson, maybe the best coach of all time, and he had Scottie Pippen. Every championship. Now, again, some of the role players were different. He had some of them. He had Horace Grant and Paxton, and some of them he had Kerr and Dennis Rodman. So, like I said, the teams weren't all the same, but every championship he had Scottie, every team he had Phil Jackson. LeBron has won it with 3, and every team who did it with was in Chicago, where he was comfortable. So like I said, for LeBron, he's won it with 3 different franchises now, different ownerships, different GMs, the whole 9. Won it with 3 different coaches. Like, he hasn't taken the same coach everywhere. Like, he had Spo. He had and made the finals with Mike Brown, and his coaching credibility is a little shaky. Had 1 championship with Spo, 1 championship with Ty Lue, now 1 championship with Frank Vogel. Also made it, like I said, with David Blatt as well as Mike Brown. And the people he's had around them look different every time. Again, in my first Cleveland team was whatever. But in the Heat, he had obviously Chris Bosh and D. Wade, and Ray Allen and Shane Battier and Mike Miller and James Jones and like UD and trying to think who else, Mario Chalmers, like those type of guys. Then he went to Cleveland. In that team, he had Kyrie, Kevin Love, JR, who else? Tristan Thompson, like Delly, Mozgov, Richard Jefferson. Like, again, that team was different. And then this year, got AD, got Dwight, got Rondo, Danny Green, KCP, Caruso, Kuzma, McJavel. Like I said, every team has been different. And yet, having him on your team means you... And again, this year wasn't a guarantee because they had to work for it. But again, having him on your team means you're going to have a chance to compete for a championship. Like I said, doesn't matter what you put around him. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Doesn't matter who the players are. Obviously, you want to have good players around him because, again, no one wins a championship by himself. You may get there, like I said, that 2018 team and that 2017 team. Name the other All-Star, name the other Hall of Famer that was on that roster. I will wait. Well, technically, I think Kevin Love was there that last year, but I mean, that's borderline. Like I said, every year that Michael made it, he had Scottie and he had Phil Jackson. In my opinion, that is a wee bit of a knock, just when you compare the 2 careers. Like, again, it's not a knock for him because, again, I don't knock Tom Brady for having Bill Belichick for every championship. I don't knock Jerry Rice and Joe Montana for having Bill Walsh. I don't knock good coaches. I don't knock good coaches for having good players, and I don't knock good players for having good coaches. Like that's an unfair knock. But again, when you look at the fact that LeBron's able to do it in both conferences, able to do it with 3 different franchises. One with Cleveland, never won before. In Miami, they'd only won 1 prior to that. And obviously the Lakers have had a lot of success, but they hadn't won anything in 10 years. Like I said, it's hard to argue. And again, he's not even done. So it's hard to argue that, like, he isn't, and I'm not saying MJ wasn't the driving force, but again, he so transcends talent. You could put him on most, like, just pick a team, and again, maybe you could do that with Jordan. I don't know. Because again, like Jordan, he didn't have to guard the best player every night if he didn't want to, because you could have Sky do that. He didn't have to worry about the coach drawing up a bad player or not getting guys or not drawing up the right offensive scheme or doing different things. Because Phil Jackson, once he introduced a triangle, it clicked. Like, it worked. Like I said, he didn't get to the NBA Finals with Doug Collins. He didn't get to the NBA Finals when he was with the Wizards, obviously. But again, obviously, he was much older than LeBron was at this time. He also didn't retire twice. Like I said, are we certain that MJ makes it 8 straight years? Probably, but also, I mean, he did play in that 95 year. People like to excuse it. People like to say it doesn't count. It still happened. Like, again, he only played 17 games, whatever. He still played in the playoffs that year, and they lost to the Magic. Now, next year they smoked the Magic, so it doesn't really. So he got the comeback, but again, that still happened. Like, the only year he took off was what, 93, 94? In 94, 95, he played that year, and they lost to the Magic. So again, there's no guarantee that he makes because again, Scotty and them, like, the guys were breaking down by that last championship. There's no guarantee if they go through 2 other ones in the mid 90s that they make it 6, 7, 8. Which is more of a testament to LeBron about the fact that his body has stayed relatively healthy while logging all these minutes and playing all these postseason games, playing all these finals games, playing all these regular season games. Like, again, doesn't really take nights off as much as he could. You see other players, you see a lot of guys load managing now. Like, he does it from time to time during the regular season, but he doesn't. That's not his thing. In the playoffs, again, he's playing deep into the playoffs every year that he's in the playoffs since he's been, like I said, 26 years old. If he gets to the playoffs, he's playing into the finals. And that's a lot of wear and tear on your body. It doesn't seem like it's slowing him down that much. So like I said, my point was not to try to convince you that he's the GOAT, because whatever you think at this point, you're going to think. I'm just saying there needs to be a discussion to be had, and it'll only get stronger the more he wins. Like I said, with his 4 championships and 4 finals MVPs right now, and all the things he's accomplished, all his accolades, everything he's done, there's a conversation to be had. Like I said, if you think it's LeBron, great. If you think it's MJ, great. My whole point for this topic was to point out that there is a conversation now that needs to be had. And I'm not saying you have to change your mind. I'm not saying you have to disagree. I'm saying you can't say that there isn't a conversation. You can't say it's unequivocally Michael Jordan. You can't. To me, at least. You just can't say that. That doesn't make any sense. You can't just be like, no, there's nothing. And obviously everybody holds the 6 losses against them, which, cool, I get. But also, he made it 10 times. Who's to say that if Michael Jordan made 10 finals and one of them in his 4th year in the league, who's to say that Michael Jordan would have a perfect record? That's my only point. That is my only point, is that the more times you go, the more chances you have to lose. Especially when you could argue that he had the inferior team at least half of those finals. Like, I don't know about half, but at least 3 or 4 of those. Like the 2 KD ones, like it was close. Well, 2017 it was close. 2018 it was not close at all. That the first Cavs team, you would definitely argue he was worse. And then maybe that last Heat team you could argue, because again, like D Wade's the knees, the situation we're going, and then that Spurs team is a well-oiled machine that year. So again, and there's at least 3 championships where you could argue he didn't have the better team. I don't know which championship you argue MJ didn't have the better team on his side. Like, I don't know which one you could argue. Again, record-wise, may not have added up, but I mean that doesn't really matter, because even for LeBron, he wasn't the 1 seed in the East every year kind of thing. Like, that doesn't really make a difference to me. But again, there's at least 3 championships or 3 finals he made where he's like unequivocally on the worst team, and still put up a good showing. Didn't win, but still put up a good showing. So again, like I'm saying, it's not set in stone. It's not like there's nothing LeBron could do. Like, no. There's a conversation at this point, and the more he does, the stronger his conversation and stronger his argument gets, in my personal opinion. But like I said, my point was not to try to convince you, because at this point there's no real convincing. But my point is just to lay out that everything he's done, everything he's accomplished, and up until this point, is enough to at least warrant a discussion now. And the discussion and the argument only gets stronger the more he wins. If he wins it next year, if he goes back to back, if he wins it at 37, if he gets to 5, if he gets to 5 and 6 in the finals, like I said, getting to 11 finals is hard. And like I said, the more you get to, the more likelihood you are going to lose. And so the MJ got to 6 was perfect, great. Flaws, I can't argue with that at all. But he only got to 6. Magic got to 9. He was 5 and 4, I believe. Like I said, I don't even know how many Bill Russell got to, because he has like the 11 championships. Like I said, but LeBron's got to 10. Like, there's no, if MJ got to 10, maybe he'd be 6 and 4, maybe he'd be 7 and 3, 8 and 2. I don't know, but he only got to 6. And like I said, that's 6 and 0. There's 100%. Like, I'm not knocking that, but getting to 10 is an accomplishment in my opinion. Like I said, I don't hold it against him to be. I don't hold it against him to be like, you got to the finals and lost. Because like I said, you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, you get to the Eastern Semifinals and lose. That's better. So if he say he lost those 3 years that he had easily the worst team, or at least 2 of those years. So say he's 4 and 4, and if he didn't get the 2007 one and 2018 one, so he's 4 and 4 in the finals. Does that better? You know, obviously he's not like, again, he doesn't have 6 finals losses, but is 4 and 4 better than 4 and 6? I can argue yes, I can argue no. Like I said, I don't want to go on this forever, but my whole point was that at this point, there is an argument to be had that LeBron is the GOAT. That's my only point. You need to have the discussion. We need to have the discussion. Like I said, you can believe whatever you can believe. I'll believe whatever I believe, but we need to have the discussion. It's a discussion now. Like, NBA is not just up there on a pedestal and no one else can reach. Like, no, Him and LeBron are sitting at the same table. You might be arguing who's the head of the table, but they're both at the same table at this point. But hey, that's just me. So after this next break, we will come back here and discuss the MLB playoffs because the ALCS has now started. Game 1 was Sunday. So we'll talk about that, give my predictions for the rest of this year, and then I'll give my predictions for the NLCS between the Braves and the Dodgers. So we'll talk about that right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So as I said, Game 1 of the ALCS, Rays Astros. Because Rays won on Friday, so we weren't sure if it was going to be the Rays or the Yankees in this series. Obviously, a bit of poetic justice, or karma, if you will call it, allowed the Rays to get this far. Mike Brasso hit the go-ahead home run in the bottom of the 8th off of Aroldis Chapman, who, if you don't know, they had a little spat earlier in the year where Chapman threw at his head with a 100-mile-per-hour heater. Very dangerous. Would not suggest. Should be the best kind of stuff you should try to get out of the game. Funny enough, Brasso came back and hit 2 home runs the next day. Not off Chapman, I don't think, but he hit 2 home runs the next day. But yes, obviously there was some history there. Brasso took the high road he took the high road. Some of the other Rays players were dancing on the graves of the New York Yankees, which, I mean, hey, look, I understand. Everyone talks about the Yankees, and they're so great, and yet they have yet to get to a World Series since they last won one in 2009. I think that's right. So yeah, like I said, they haven't gotten that far. They get to the divisional round or the ALCS and they just lose to whoever, and they just can't get over that hump for whatever reason. And this is another year where they could not get it over the hump, even after paying Garrett Cole all that money. He pitched great, so I felt bad for him because he was great. He only gave up 1 run in like 6 innings on something like that on short rest. He was sensational, but when you have a lineup that can't hit consistently against good pitching, it's going to happen. I mean, there were 6 combined hits in the game, and only 3 runs in that Game 5. All the runs came on home runs. And obviously Brasso's he came off the bench too. He pinch hit for G-Man Choi. He was 2 for 2 with the home run. So, like I said, he got his little poetic justice, if you want to call it that, against Chapman. So shout out to him for that. So yeah, that led them to being in the ALCS, and then Game 1 was Sunday. And that game, much like the Game 5, was another close, low-scoring pitching duel, if you want to call it that the Rays were able to come out on top of. Now, I did not know this going into this game, but apparently the Rays were 14-5 in one-run games in regular season. And they are now 2-0 in one-run games in the postseason. So this is I'm not saying this is the kind of baseball they want to play, but this is a kind of baseball they are comfortable playing. I will say that much. And I think that's important that you can play off time, because you don't expect just to beat up on everybody. You don't expect every game to be a home run derby, things like that. You expect games to be close. You expect guys to have to make pitches. You expect guys to have to make plays defensively, come up with clutch hits. Come up with big home runs, big singles, whatever you need, or move runners over, steal steal bases, whatever needs to be done to get the W. That's what you're expecting in the playoffs. And like I said, especially when the games are tight, you don't expect to be up 2, 3, 4 runs every game, and just be able to like not to be a breeze, but like you don't feel any like pressure or anything. Obviously, there's always going to be pressure because it's the playoffs, but like again, when it's one run game late in the 8th, 9th inning, those at bats are more pressure packed from a pitching standpoint and a hitter because there's less margin for error than they are if you have a 3-run lead or a 4-run lead in the 8th or 9th inning. Again, obviously you probably feel a little bit more free, though. Again, you do want to do the best you can. So, as I said, the Rays, this is the type of game, this type of situation where they feel comfortable in, and you can see that late in the game, though. Obviously, we'll talk about how we got there. And Altuve got a jump in early, hit a home run off Snell in the first inning, and that was it for the Astros scoring. They got a home run from Rosarena in the 4th, who, again, continues to show out in this postseason. He was only 1 for 4 on the night, and obviously that's dropped his overall average, but the one he hit was a big one. It was a home run, tied up the game. Nice one, too, 400 feet, like a little bit to like right center. Got a fastball out over the plate, didn't miss it, so that was good. I mean, he struck out swinging his 3 other times, but hey, look, when you come with the big hit, you get the big hit. That's all that matters. Then in the 5th inning, Mike Zunino singled home Willie Adames for their second run, and that's all they needed to give their pitching staff. And even with that one, like that's one where if Altuve is taller, like he gets that ball. And obviously, again, he's been this height the whole time, at least when he's been in the league. So there's not really much you can do, and he's obviously played great defense, regardless of it. But he was just a little bit out of reach of his dive. So again, if he's just like an average height, like he probably gets that ball. And Zunino is the catcher; like he's not going to be running that fast, even in the shift. Like they probably get him out easy. But again, it's just one of those fortunate things that first pitch swinging the ball found a nice hole in the shift. Zunino came up with the hit. Like I said, and that's all their pitching staff needed, or mainly the bullpen, because I think that was bottom of the 5th. So I think Snell only pitched 5. He only pitched the first 5, 6 hits, 1 run, 2 Ks, 2 walks. Again, was able to get the job done, and the bullpen did what it's done all postseason. That's shut things down. Loop or Lope, however you pronounce it, the lefty, he was a little bit shaky. Only got 1 out. In his, I think he pitched, obviously he had to pitch to 3 batters, but he got a hit, got a walk, was able to strike a guy out, but then Castillo had to come in, it was in the 8th. Yeah, he came in the 8th, was able to force a double play on the first pitch, Gurriel, first pitch swinging ground into a double play, and that hurt. They had runners, they had bases loaded at the time, because Brantley got hit, he walked Correa, and then Tucker singled to Shamble left. And that was the issue, was that if Brantley's either a little bit faster or B, Tucker hits the ball a little bit softer, because it was a hard line drive through the infield. So it was on the ground, it's kind of what you want. But again, because he hit it so hard that the left fielder was able to get to it fairly quickly, and again, Brantley's not that fast, so he would have been thrown out at home if he went. So it's like, all right, we'll hold him up at third. But then, like I said, Castillo came in, first pitch ground out, and then in the top 9, he got a line out, Reddick reached on an infield single, then he was able to get a ground out for Springer. He covered the bag nicely on that one, and then struck out Altuve on a dirty, I'm pretty sure it was the slider. I could be wrong though. But regardless, the pitch was nasty. And like I said, that's what their bullpen's done most of the season, and that's what they've done the entire playoffs, is they've gotten enough starting pitching that the bullpen's come in and been pretty much lights out. And, I mean, that's how they got the Yankees, and that's why I think they would get through the Astros. Obviously, I didn't make my prediction. I couldn't make it until now, because I didn't know who was going to be in the series. But with the Astros, especially if I don't think Greinke was healthy, or is going to be healthy, so I think that hurts, though obviously he hasn't been, shut down in the postseason, but he's, also probably their best and most experienced pitcher at this point. So if he's not going to pitch in the postseason, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue, because again, their starting pitching isn't that great. Their bullpen's been very solid throughout these first 2 series. And even their bullpen, like I said, when it came in today, after Valdez, who pitched pretty well. It was shut down. Only gave up 2 hits and struck out 5 over the last 2 innings. So again, their bullpen's been great. They were able to get them out of jams as well. So if it turns into a bullpen duel, and then I probably lean a little bit more Rays. Like I said, I don't think they'll sweep them or they're winning like 5 games or anything like that. But I think over the course of a series, like again, everybody thinks like, oh, the better offense. They just went through the Yankees, whose offense 1 through 9, you would probably say is better than the Astros 1 through 9, and got through it not easily. Again, it wasn't an easy series. It took them some time to do it, but it's not like they were getting hit all over the yard all series. So like I said, and again, it's not like their lineup hasn't also been hitting. Like again, on paper, or like Correa and Altuve and Bregman and Brantley and Springer and those type of Tucker, like, well, maybe not Tucker, he hasn't been in the playoffs that much, but those first 5, are they more seasoned and better postseason hitters? Yes, of course, because they've just been there more. But again, the Rays lineup is no slouches. And again, they're doing all this while Brandon Lowe, probably their best hitter during the regular season, is in the middle of a bad slump. Like, I mean, he can't get on base to save his life at this point. I mean, in terms of like hitting the ball, and they're kind of waiting for him to get going. He had he played 56 games. He was there. He had 14 home runs, 37 RBIs. So he was like a big bat for them during the regular season, and he just can't get it going right now. So that's kind of, like I said, that's the unfortunate part. Is where they're at. Like again, he was their leading home run getter. Leading home run hitter. He led their team in RBIs. So he was big for them. Didn't have their highest average or anything like that, but he was big for them in terms of power. When he hasn't got anything though. He's hitting like under 100 at this point. But again, Rosarena, even though he's kind of struggling the last few games, still hitting 444, has 3 home runs. Margot has 2 home runs. Meadows has 2 home runs. Zunino has 2 home runs. Brasso had a big home run. He's hitting 500 in the playoffs. Wendell's hitting 300 in the playoffs. Like, again, they've got enough hitting, and also, like I said, they're used to playing close games. Like, that's what they do. Like, they're not afraid of low scoring close games as opposed to Astros. That's not their thing. Their thing is good. They're gonna have to try to outslug people. Obviously, they didn't have to before because they had better pitching, but they still could. But now, like, that's their game. They're gonna have to outslug people at this point. And again, we'll see what happens. I think they're starting McCullers tomorrow against Morton. So obviously, Morton's been with them, so you would think. I mean, they didn't face him, but like, you know what he has and who he is. So that would help. But like I said, I just right now, at least in the playoffs, I generally count pitching and timely hitting more than just like the best lineup. Because again, if that was the case, the Yankees would be like on their way to a 3-peat or a 4-peat at this point. Because their 1 through 9 on most nights is better than the other team's 1 through 9. And when you get to the playoffs, has that mattered? Not in the slightest. So that would be my worry if I'm the Astros, is like, do we have the pitching to match up? Because I think the Rays have the arms, and they've shown that, whether it be bullpen or starters. And again, their starters aren't like absolutely, they're not all aces, but like they get the job done. And like I said, get the ball to the bullpen, and then it's usually curtains from there. And like I said, the Astros, their bullpen's been pretty good. Their starting pitching's been good enough, and then like they just out-hit people, at least in the first 2 rounds. So this thing is going to be the best staff they've faced. Obviously, they faced the A's last series with a good bullpen, but they know the A's. Like they've played the A's a lot before. They haven't really played the Rays like that, especially not this year. They literally haven't played the Rays at all. So you're getting these guys first time, and again, 7 games, 7 days. That even hurts the Astros more because again, they don't have as many arms or arms you can count on as the Rays do. So like I said, I want the Astros to win because I want chaos, and I need an Astros Dodgers World Series just for ultimate chaos purposes. But I just trust the pitching of the Rays more, and I think they can get enough timely hits. That's what matters, is timely hits. It doesn't matter if you have the big boppers or if you have a bunch of power guys that can all hit 450-foot home runs. Like, can you get the hits in the clutch moments? That's what the Yankees couldn't do. Like I said, I think the Rays can do that and can get enough of those hits to where that'll make up for whatever lack of power, lack of pop they have in their lineup. So that's how I feel. We'll see how it plays out. But again, like I said, usually in October, you put faith in the pitching more than the hitting because again, you're facing better pitchers, so it's going to be tougher to hit. I think as opposed to pitchers are used to facing good hitters every game, like good. Like I said, I have a little bit more faith in the Rays. Though, like I said, I want the Astros to win because I need chaos. And then going to the NL side of things, Braves, Dodgers. It's a similar matchup where it's like the Braves are like the hitting team and the Dodgers like the everything team. Obviously, they're different than the Rays because they have both the lineup and the pitching to match starters and bullpen. Though, with Kenley Jansen and his situation, I don't know how that's going to play out. Not having him, but again, they have other arms to make up for it. They should be fine. Plus, again, they have starting pitching to go and last a 7 games, 7 days situation. But I think the Braves will make this tricky for them because the Braves again have the lineup if they can get the top of their order going again this series, and also if they get the starting pitching they've gotten so far through the playoffs, that's going to make this a whole different kind of series. Because again, that was the worry is that like, do we have enough pitching behind Max Fried to sustain multiple rounds in the playoffs? And like I said, Ian Anderson's been great. Kyle Wright was great in the game 3. I'm pretty sure that was game 3. And also, I think at this point, like, it hasn't, if I remember correctly, neither team has lost in the playoffs yet. Let me double check. Yeah, okay, so the Braves won 2-0, then 3-0. And I think the Dodgers... No, wait, hold on. Yeah, the Dodgers won 2-0 and then 3-0. So neither team's lost yet. And like I said, the last series, like they beat the Padres just because the Padres didn't have the pitching. And you're going to see better pitching from the Braves this series. So that gives me a little bit more pause. At least from the Dodgers' perspective. Though, like I said, they've been the team to beat all season. There's no reason to bet against them now. They've shown you no real chinks in the armor. They've shown you no real weaknesses that you can really exploit. But the biggest thing for the Braves was can they get the pitching? And right now they're getting the pitching, both from the bullpen that's been like basically lights out, and from the starters. Because like I said, they can get that. Like they're going to be in great shape. Great shape. If they can get the bats woken up. Because again, their hitting hasn't been terrible, but again, you look at their playoff stats, like Duvall's not doing a whole lot, Freeman's not doing a whole lot, Albies isn't doing a whole lot, Markakis isn't doing a whole lot, Ozuna's not doing a whole lot in terms of average. Like, obviously Ozuna, Acuna, Swanson, Duvall, they're getting big time hits, but like their best hitter in the playoffs has been Travis d'Arnaud. Easily at this point. And again, he's not their best hitter on their team, so you need some of the other guys to pick it up. But again, they've had the pitching to where it hasn't mattered and they've gotten the timely hits. Let's see, look at the Dodgers side of things. They're getting better production from their lineup while also getting similar contributions from their starting pitching and their bullpen. Obviously, outside Jansen, who hasn't been that great, and Korolek, who wasn't that great in his one appearance. Outside of those two, everybody else has been locked down. Kershaw's looking great. Urias is looking great. Buehler has done his job. Hasn't been shut down, but has done his job. And like I said, the rest of their bullpen's been basically lights out when they needed them. So like I said, this is going to be a great matchup, great series in my personal opinion. Though, like I said, as much as it would be cool for the Braves to get over that hump and beat the Dodgers, and obviously it's always funny when the high-profile teams lose. Dodgers, Yankees, Lakers, doesn't matter the sport. I just think at this point there's no reason to bet against the Dodgers because they haven't shown you anything or any reason to bet against them, at least to me. And then, like I said, with you look at their lineup, it's still not perfect, but I mean, Betts is hitting good, Bellinger's hitting good, Will Smith came off. I think he had like a 5. I thought he had the 5-hit game in the last game. Pox doing good, Seager's hitting well, like. Even the guys like Turner and Muncy aren't hitting great, but they've gotten enough. They've done enough to where like they've been able to contribute in some ways. So that's never a bad thing. So yeah, like, and they haven't even hit that many home runs. If they start getting the pop back in the bat, then it could be nice, lights out. So, like I said, I think the matchup will be Dodgers Rays. Though, like I said, I want the Astros to win and I want the Braves to win. So we'll see what happens and how it goes. Like I said, ultimate chaos, Astros Dodgers for the World Series. And again, based on everything that happened with the Astros this year, that would be hysterical. I just don't know if they have the pitching to let it happen. Like I said, they're gonna have to try to out-hit the Rays every game, and like that may be too tall of an ask. When again you went down 0-1 already. Like they would have snuck this game out. All right, maybe I could see that, but having now being down 0-1 and now you have to win 4 and 6, and like I said, you're gonna have to count basically almost entirely on your lineup. If you don't trust your starting pitching, at least, especially with Greinke on the fence, and you don't really know how healthy he is. Like I said, I might have to lean the Rays. So Rays, Dodgers, World Series is what I think could happen, but again, what do I know? We'll see how it plays out. After this last break, we will come back here and discuss college football because the SEC is in shambles. The Big 12 is in shambles. An SEC coach is hoping his school has their students risk the Rona so they can have some fans in the stands. So we'll discuss all of that right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So yeah, tough week for the big name schools in the SEC, not named Alabama and Georgia. Though Auburn did get the win, but that win was very shaky. That clock where Bo Nix spiked it at the end, that clearly was backwards. So that should have been a fumble. Refs let it slide. Granted, the brother made the kick, so it is what it is. But Bo Nix does some things sometimes. It's kind of like the Josh Allen experience where you like he does things and you're just like, why would you do that? Or like, well, what are you thinking at that moment? And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, the Auburn just survived that game. Like just survived that game. Like I said, that was clearly a fumble. But hey, wasn't called. Or I think or they did call it like intentional grounding or something. I don't know. It was weird. Should have been a fumble. Arkansas should have been able to recover it, and they should have just won the game. But whatever. They got the dub. But Florida struggled against Texas A&M. Again, the offense looked great. Kyle Trask still looks good. He had 4 touchdowns. And Tony Fellow had 2 more touchdowns. Kyle Pitts had another touchdown. I don't know. I mean, that brother could just opt out right now. He might be the first tight end off the board, in all honesty. But their defense got really let them down. And like they said, they had trouble with Kellen Mond all day. He had 338 yards on 25 of 35, 3 touchdowns. Isaiah Spiller? Yes, Isaiah Spiller had 174 on the ground and 2 touchdowns. They could not stop him at all. This Chapman fellow, he had 9 for 151, 2 touchdowns, doing his best Travis Fulgham impression. So yeah, like again, this is a game that you don't expect Florida to lose. I didn't expect Florida to lose, but this year is weird. And like I said, I want to give Texas A&M credit because they battled and they were able to get down the field there at the end and kick a field goal after they were able to score a touchdown to tie the game, and then Florida had a very unfortunate fumble that was recovered by Texas A&M, and then they were able to bleed out the clock because, again, Florida could not stop the run, and they would kick the game-winning field goal there right as the clock hit 0. So, big win for Texas A&M. Tough loss for Florida because, again, they got Georgia coming up next week, so they're going to need that dub there. Still got Tennessee on the schedule. Still potentially might have to get to the SEC championship game. So, not that Texas A&M is a terrible team. No, take that back. They don't play Georgia for a while. Excuse me. I apologize. They play LSU next. That should be a dub because LSU stinks, which we'll talk about in a second. And they play Missouri. Then they play Georgia. So, they don't play Georgia till November. So, like I said, they still got to play Georgia. Still got to play Tennessee. So, still got some games against decent teams coming up. But again, Texas A&M is not a game they expected to lose. But it is one that they did. So, we have to get some things figured out. Though, again, LSU their defenses look sorry. So they should be fine there. But yeah, that's a tough loss for LSU, or tough loss for Florida. And then Dan Mullen was bugging after the game. So, Texas A&M had 20-something. They had I forget what the official number was for the fan numbers at the game. But how many ever there were, it clearly upset Dan Mullen. And he had this asinine statement in his press conference after the game. I mean, the video makes it look even worse because he's wearing a mask while wearing this, so it's kind of funny. But okay. So they had 15,000. They were only able to sell 15,000 of the seats for their. Florida was only able to sell 15,000 seats for the home opener against South Carolina. I forget whatever Texas A&M was able to hold. I think it was in the 20,000 range. So then Dan Mullen said in his post-game press conference that, I know our governor passed that rule, so certainly hopefully the university administration decides to let us pack the swamp against LSU 100% because the crowd was a major factor in the game. Mullen said, so I certainly hope our university administration follows the governor. The governor has passed a rule that we're allowed to pack the swamp and have 90,000 in the swamp to give us home field advantage. Give us the home field advantage Texas A&M had today. And again, I would like to remind you that I don't believe Texas A&M Stadium was full. There's a lot of people. I think, like I said, 25,000, something like that. There's a lot of people down there in Texas. But it wasn't full. Dan was asking for full because he lost. Again, if you're going to blame the loss on, some fans showing up, then you guys aren't as good as you thought you were. That's point blank, period. Because, again, you're used to this. Not, again, this year's weird, but it's not that's not an excuse any other year. If it's their stadium had more people in it, or their stadium holds more people than our stadium is, it's that's not unfair for them. No, just all right, I understand there was some crowd noise or whatever. Again, you knew that certain people are letting in different amounts so you knew that's going to happen. But again, could you imagine an NFL team being well, you know what, they had crowds, and we didn't have as many, so that's why we lost. No, you guys lost because you couldn't stop the run. You lost because you couldn't, Kellen Mond did whatever he wanted out from the pocket. You didn't lose because they had fans in the stadium. You lose because you couldn't get a stop. That's why you lost. You lost because the guy fumbled the ball when you were up 7. That's why you lost. Again, or you lost because maybe the players weren't prepared properly by the coaches. Again, it's very easy to deflect blame when you are the one to blame. You'd be oh, well, hey, it's this guy's fault or that guy's fault. No. Sometimes you just lose. Why are you acting oh, we lost because Texas A&M let too many fans in? It's what? You sound stupid. That's a terrible excuse to use, especially in a pandemic. I don't care what your governor said. Florida's governor does not really care about the Rona. That has been clear and evident since the beginning. So you risking potentially having a super spreader event 2 weeks after a good portion of the president's inner circle, which should be the most protected, but they weren't, has tested positive for COVID. You're going to be yeah, let's just pack a stadium full of 90,000 people where social distancing is literally impossible. Do you understand how you sound? Demon, do you understand how you sound? You sound crazy. Man, if it was a normal year, fine. But we are in the middle of a pandemic. I understand what your governor put. But the university has a responsibility to these students, to this faculty, to these players even. That, again, apparently you don't care about because you're just like, we want to win football games. Which is, again, why this whole season is being played anyway. Because we want to make money and win football games at the expense of players who aren't being paid and who are assuming a vast majority of the risk. Because they're the ones going to classes and stuff. Like again, you pack the Swamp with 90,000 people. 90,000. You think there's not a good chance that more than one of those 90,000 has COVID? Like, the bigger your group is, the better chance there is that a higher number of people have COVID. Like, and that's the last thing you want. You're telling me you want to shut down? You want the Gainesville to be shut down because we packed the Swamp with 90,000 again? It might happen. I would not put it past Florida to pack the Swamp. But again, it's against LSU. LSU is sorry this year. Like, they're not even that good. I understand if this was the Joe Burrow and the national championship LSU team, all right, yeah. Like, no, it would still be stupid. But I'm like, I could justify you being like, we need the crowd, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's still, I wouldn't go for it. It's still a dumb excuse. But, like, I could understand why, as a football coach, you're like, we need every advantage we can get. This LSU team is not that good. It is not that good. If you really think the crowd is the reason why they lost to Texas A&M, then you don't think your football team is that good, is basically what you're saying. In my opinion. That's the way I'm interpreting it. Is that, like, we stink unless we have home field advantage. So we need home field advantage in order to be good. You're the number 4 team in the country. Crowd, no crowd, you should be able to beat Texas A&M. Unless you're not as good as the coaches you think you are. Unless these players aren't as good as they think they are, or you guys think they are. How is that the excuse after you lose? Like, oh, they had too many people in the stands. So we need to have triple that amount. It's not, again, it wasn't full. I know he claimed that, behind their bench there was a lot of people, blah, 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 whatever. Student section was full, whatever. That stadium was not full. I forget what the official number was. I know they if you look up his video, like him talking about it, like you can see the official number on the screen, like they played it. It was 24,709 fans allowed at Texas A&M Kyle Field. 24,000, and he's talking about packing the Swamp with 90,000 people. Like, what are you like? Did you not think before you said these things? I understand you just lost, you're emotional, you want to get a win, blah blah blah. It is a pandemic. COVID still exists. This is not over. Like, what are you talking about, Dan Mullen? What are you talking about? Like, you sound crazy. But hey, it's Florida, so we'll see what happens there. That was a mess. Speaking of LSU, they still stink. They lost to Missouri this weekend, who I don't know if Missouri was good or bad. They were 0-2 coming into this game. Could not stop anything. Gave up 45 points. This quarterback, Bazelak, threw for 400 yards on 29 of 34, 4 touchdowns. Roundtree had 119 yards on the ground. I mean, their offense still looked good. Brennan still threw for over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. Terrence Marshall had himself a day, 11 for 235 and 3 touchdowns. I know he's happy that Justin Jefferson went to the NFL and Jamar Chase opted out. And now he's getting all the balls. And he's been sensational. Or he was at least sensational in this game. He's been pretty good. But then, obviously, LSU had the chance there at the end. He got down to the 1. I'm pretty sure they got down to the 1 yard line. They at the end of the game, they had 4 shots. They had a run for no gain, and 2 straight passes broken up, intended for Terrence Marshall. And that was it. Like, again, if you can't get 1 yard, you're not that good of a football team. And that's just what happens. And like, right now, they're not that good. Like I said, the offense is still putting up points. Like, that's great. Though Missouri, they're not that good. The offense is still moving the ball, still putting up points. That's great to see. Though, again, they couldn't move the ball when they got to within a yard. So there is that. But the defense. And again, obviously, I know like they had a lot of guys go pro. I thought like a guy or 2 opted out. So like they're having some issues there. Though Stingley played, so that's not great at all. Like he was out there and Brothers was still struggling. But yeah, I was again, this isn't the same team that it was last year. But still, they're not supposed to give up 45 points to Missouri. That's not how the season's supposed to go. So yeah, Coach O looking a little funny in that light without Joe Burrow and Joe Brady to mask it. Though again, the offense still the defense just can't stop a soul right now. Like they have now given up in their 3 games. They have given up 44, 7 to Vanderbilt, just shout out to that, and then now 45. And then they play Florida. Still got to play Alabama. Still got to play Texas A&M. Still got to play Auburn. So, and they still got to play Arkansas, who put up decent number of points against Auburn. And I think it was the weather down there was bad. Even Ole Miss, who put up a very good fight against Alabama for as long as they could, scored 48 on them. Alabama's defense is in shambles right now, but again, they're scoring 63 points, so it doesn't really matter. Again, now she's going to they're going to be in a lot of shootouts this year. And see how it turns out, but yeah. Going to be a lot of shootouts. Again, shout out to Ole Miss for keeping the Alabama game entertaining for as long as they could. But after a certain point, just like, yeah, you know what, Alabama's better than we are. We can't stop Mac Jones. We can't stop Devontae Smith. We can't stop Najee Harris. He had 200 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. They ran for 7 touchdowns as a team. Devontae Smith had over 160 yards. Waddle had 120 yards. Like, again, Ole Miss, they just couldn't get a stop. Though, their offense looked pretty good. Corral looked solid for a majority of the day. They ran for 260. So they had their chances. But again, obviously, like in the second half, the Alabama was just able to pull away there just a tad bit. Though, again, it was back and forth for a while. But then, like I said, they just couldn't get a stop. That was the big issue. They couldn't get a stop, and they settled for field goals in the second half when Alabama was scoring touchdowns every time down. So that hurt. And also shout out to Georgia for getting a very convincing dub against Tennessee, though. It was close there for a while, but then Georgia pulled away at the end. The last thing I want to talk about is obviously the Big 12. Because Oklahoma, even though they tried to lose, even though they had to bench Spencer Rattler in the first half because he was playing poorly, and like I said, they gave back a big lead. Not a big lead, but they gave back a lead there in the second half to Texas. Still found a way to get the job done in 4 overtimes, mind you. Like, that was a nuts game. I'm not going to say it was a great game. It was just nuts. Sam Ehlinger ended the game with a pick, so that hurt. But he had 4 touchdowns on the ground, threw for 2 more. Like I said, he did the Texas thing where they come back from down double digits late in the game. He scored 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes or 4 minutes of the game and tie it up. The last one being with 14 seconds left in the game. Then it went to overtime, back and forth. Both teams, Oklahoma, and this is why I say that both teams deserve to lose. Oklahoma playing for the field goal in overtime was so bad. Because after they miss it, even though the kicker's been great and everything, but again, just run a normal offense. I hate when teams do that. Just like, we get into field goal range, we're like, all right, we'll just settle for the field goal as if field goals are guaranteed. Like, hey, look, why not try to score a touchdown if you can? Like, what is the harm in that? I understand Spencer Rattler is kind of shaky, but you already had, all right, the worst outcome is you go to a 4th overtime, assuming he doesn't throw a pick six or get a fumble return for a touchdown. Like, the worst outcome is a 4th overtime, which, again, could happen if you miss the kick anyway. It's not you lose the game. So I get that point of playing for a field goal if you think you could lose the game. But if the game's tied, like, just run a normal offense, because literally the next possession, once they got the ball back, they scored, I think, either on the first or second play of the 4th overtime. Second play. Because incomplete pass, then a 25-yard touchdown. Like I said, they just were aggressive. They could have just scored. And then they could have scored in the 3rd overtime. The game would have been over instead of just, settling for the field goal. Because they were just like, hey, why don't we just settle for the field goal? So they got to the 14, and they just, after they got the first down, they were like, hey, we're just going to move the ball to the middle, let this guy kick it. Like, no, just run your offense, and you know you have the field goal in your back pocket. I'm saying you don't trust Spencer Rattler, but, trust Spencer Rattler. He's been playing well at that point. It's not like it was first half. His first half, got you. But it was second half, he was playing a lot better. So I didn't understand that. So both teams deserve to lose. Both teams tried their best to lose. But Oklahoma was able to do just a little bit more, and they got the dub. So now they're 2-2, Texas 2-2. Like I said, Big 12's in shambles. They basically have Oklahoma State. That's their only chance of making it to the playoff. And who knows if they'll even go undefeated. So their two best chances in Oklahoma and Texas both lost twice now. So there's no chance to win Big 12 team. Again, they would need like SEC schools and Big 10 schools and ACC schools to have like 3 or 4 losses to have a shot. But hey, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Oklahoma State is now their only shot at getting to the playoff, in my opinion. And again, that might not even be enough. Or I guess maybe Kansas State or whatever. Or Iowa State. But at least Oklahoma State's in the top 10 right now. So like I said, it'd be too hard for Iowa State or Kansas State to go from in the 20s to top 4. Again, once you start the Big 10 play and once you start Pac-12 play, it's going to be too difficult for them to make up that gap, in my opinion. So, yeah. Also, just real quick, shout out to Clemson for their dominant victory over Miami. They just, again, it's levels. Clemson showed its levels. And, again, not surprising. Kind of expected it, but Miami just a little bit below. So, keep your eyes peeled for that. Oh, the 7th was like it's going to be an action-packed day because Clemson plays Notre Dame, so they could potentially be undefeated both at that point. That would be a big game. Just again because Notre Dame's currently at 4 because a bunch of other teams are losing and stuff, and Clemson's at 1. And also by then, Big 10 will have started playing, so they'll be in the rankings as well. So that'll be a real. That'll be when things get down to the nitty and the gritty. So we'll see how that plays out. But that'll do it for me here today on GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys, as always, for listening to me talk. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure I was on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a review, wherever you listen to your podcast at. Be greatly appreciated. If very helpful, I'll see what you guys like, or what you guys dislike, the ways you can improve. All that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss the MLB playoffs. We can discuss the finals that just finished. We can discuss Week 5 of the NFL season and what you're looking forward to. Who you think the best teams in the league are. Did Russ help nudge himself ahead of the other contenders in the MVP race? Though obviously, I guess the Packers are on a bye this week. I guess they're on a bye this week. I didn't even realize. Or did that game get canceled? Hold on, I gotta double check that because I know Aaron Rodgers isn't playing, or he didn't play. So now I'm confused because, like I said, did that game get canceled or did they just have a bye? They might have just had a bye. Let me double check. No, okay, no, they just had an early bye. All right, I have to double check. Like I said, I think the only game I got canceled is the Pats game. I'm pretty sure. That's the only one that got canceled. But yeah, so then he still has to play. Russell has to play. Not Russ. Josh Allen still has to play. So obviously Lamar and Mahomes took their steps back a little bit. But we'll see how that plays out. We talk about that. Talk about the MLB playoffs. Talk about college, about what you think is going to happen in the Big 12 or the SEC this year. Because again, obviously high-powered teams are losing already, and Big 10 and Pac-12 hasn't even started yet. Whatever you want to discuss, feel free to reach out to us on social media. Before I get out of here, as I always do, I want to give a shout out to essential workers that are working tirelessly through this pandemic to make sure everybody's staying safe and healthy as they can. So doctors, nurses, EMTs, first responders, firefighters, postal service workers, delivery drivers, FedEx, UPS, Amazon, everybody that has been deemed essential, like I said, is working, the grocery store workers, retail workers, anybody that has to deal with people on a daily basis, that people, especially that may or may not be taking this pandemic as seriously as they should be, which again, at this point in October is kind of wild, but hey, teach their own. Like I said, shout out to you guys. I know you guys are dealing with a lot and have had to do a lot during this pandemic, so if no one else said you're appreciated, at least you know you're appreciated by myself. Also, if you're going to go out and eat, go out to a restaurant, out to a bar, things like that, just make sure you're tipping your waiters, waitresses, bartenders nicely if you can. Again, I'm not telling anyone to go above and beyond their means, but if you can, I think a little extra tip would probably go a long way, especially during these times where the restaurant industry is being hit hard. Things like that, you don't really, not a lot of people don't even know if they'll be able to survive through the winter again, because the whole no indoor dining thing in some places, like certain like northeast places, that's how are you gonna have dining? It's gonna get cold, so it's gonna be tough. And even with that, again, most places are like, even if they're inside, it's like 50% capacity, whatever. So if you're used to seeing a high number of people, half of that, it means half the revenue. So again, the whole industry is hurting just a wee bit. Obviously, everybody's hurting. I'm not just saying that. But, again, if you're going to go out and use those services, just tip if you can. Also, wear a mask. Well, that'll do it for me here today. I've been Chris Blades. That has been my time. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.